Today is Wednesday, February 9th, 2022. It's 4 p.m. This is our regular council meeting. The meeting will be broadcast via YouTube Live, linked at washingtoncity.org/meetings. Is the Reverend Steve Bray here this evening? Okay, I don't see the Reverend here this evening. Councilmember Henderson, would you offer the invocation for us? Thank you.
Our dear Father in heaven, we're grateful for the many blessings that we have. We're grateful for the opportunity that we have to meet here as a community, the city council meeting. We're thankful for this wonderful community that we live in and for the good people that are here. And we'd like to ask thy special blessings upon our community and the people within the community. We're thankful for all that we have, Father, for the wonderful, beautiful area that we live in, for the free country that we live in. Bless us with thy Spirit today that we can have a good meeting, and we say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, council member. At this time, I'd like to invite Washington City Police Officer Scott Ray, who is also a 20-year retired Navy vet, to come forward and lead this group in the Pledge of Allegiance. Officer Ray. We appreciate your service to our country and to our community, Officer Ray. Thank you. At this time, I'll call for an approval of the agenda.
Mayor, if I may, I have a question on the agenda, and it kind of stems from us moving stuff around from where we typically have put them. We've moved up a bunch of stuff to fill up some time from the 4 o'clock to the 5 o'clock for the public hearing. I think I said this when we started at 4 o'clock. I am concerned that we're not starting at 5, so public. I mean, I see the public's taken time off work and gotten here early. I'm just concerned. I think my personal opinion is we should switch it back to 5 o'clock at least. We used to start at 6. So it's something I'd like to discuss, because what I'd hate is that we have to start a public meeting early. So we tried it for a month. It seems like we're putting extra work on our staff, especially the staff members that have to do double duty on work sessions versus not.
Thank you, council member. I appreciate your point. Your points are well taken, and we'll put that on the record. Now's not the exact time to have that conversation, but I appreciate the feedback that I've had from you and for others. We'll certainly take that in consideration, and there are...
So can we get on the next work session agenda meeting?
Yeah, let's have a conversation about that after this meeting. Right now, what I'm calling for is an approval of this agenda at this meeting time. So I'll call for a motion on that.
Mayor, I can make the approval of the agenda for our Washington City Council regular meeting, February 9th, 2022.
I have a motion by Ivy, a second by Henderson. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The agenda is approved unanimously. We'll move on to item 2, which is announcements. Really appreciate each of you making the time and the sacrifice to visit the Capitol. I thought that was time well spent, and I thought that really each of you represented Washington City and our interests very well as we met with the governor and the legislators there, and it was also a privilege to have you there, Carmen, and the Youth Council. Thanks for letting us join you. It was time well spent. The legislative session continues on the Hill through March 4th, and as a council and staff, we're watching those bills and any that affect us locally. Continuing with announcements, Lions Club meeting is tomorrow at 7 p.m. in the old gym behind the old school. The Lincoln Day event is this Saturday, February 12th for the council. And also for anyone in a range of my voice, Valentine's Day is Monday, February 14th, so
Plan ahead.
plan ahead. February 16th from 11:30 a.m. till 1 p.m. I will be giving a State of the City address in conjunction with the St. George Area Chamber of Commerce, and that will be right here in Washington at the Dance Hall in Cottontown Village. February 16th at 4 p.m., we have a City Council workshop scheduled. City Hall will be closed on Monday, February 21st, in observance of President's Day. And our next regular meeting will be held on February 23rd at 4 p.m. And for the record, as we have been meeting at 4 p.m., Councilman Coates has asked that we start the public hearing portion at 5 p.m. So there may be a little bit of a break in between the agenda items and the public hearing portion of the meeting, and that's okay. Let's move on to item 3. It's report of officers. Is there any other announcements, Council, that I may have missed or something that?
I think the Lions Club meeting is actually at the old Relief Society building.
Oh, are they meeting there now?
Correct. They
Awesome.
had to move just due to the preschool meeting in
Okay.
the old gym.
Okay. And we'll just ask IT if they'll update that on our calendar there. I haven't been for a while, but I know you go regularly. Thank you, Council Member. Any other announcements? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to item 3, a report of officers from assigned committees. Is there anyone who'd like to go first?
Mayor, I have a couple of items to report on to the council. I had a wonderful meeting with the Washington City Arts Council. It was refreshing to see old friends and make new ones there that night. Deb Bice and Melanie Olson is our city representatives. They are eager and excited to be a part of our city. And I did share with them what we had talked about as a council, that we see them as a vital part going forward. We realize that that art component in our city has maybe been lacking, and we want to bring that about. We plan to involve them in all those decisions, and of course they're part of the Southern Utah Art Guild, and I'm just very proud to be on that committee. There's great people there, and I actually got to sit by Councilwoman Colleen Granger again. I sat by her in council several years ago, and it was great to be reacquainted with her, and she's doing well. The only other thing, Mayor, as you touched on, is legislative policy. I was able to attend in person the legislative policy meeting last Monday. There are several bills, far too many to talk about. Just need to know that the ones that concern us as a city, we are monitoring them. I asked the council for periodic input on what their position is. We work with the league on what their positions are on each bill, and then we try to assess if that's what is best for our city as well. So that we plan to be there again every week until the session's over. But so far, I can report that our legislators' ears are wide open. They're very receptive to when we reach out and ask them to consider our feelings, and I feel very fortunate for our legislators that serve at the Capitol. And that concludes my report, Mayor.
Councilmember, are you attending in person on those?
Yes,
So
most
you-
of them.
So
I'm attending Land Use Task Force as well.
one thing, Mayor and councils, that comes up is there are times when the city will be asked to vote as it regards positions that the league takes. And so the councilman and I and the manager will make sure we're all on the same page there. And we haven't had any votes as to positions yet, but those are likely to come up, especially with the laws that we're seeing.
The position from the league so far, in my estimation and with my knowledge with the council, was that there's been no conflict with those so far, but we will definitely get back if there's something that looks like it needs to be addressed.
Thank you, Councilmember, and thank you, Council. I believe that our legal counsel, myself, and Councilman Ivy are the voting members on that board. Let's move on to Councilmember Coates. Anything on your assignments?
Once again, we haven't had a solid waste board, but we got some things coming up. So, and it's something the manager and the mayor and I should get together and discuss on a thing. They're trying to get together a trash cleanup. All the cities are looking to do it on February 25th. I guess this should have been in announcements, but they're looking to do it's a Friday, and they're looking to do a a cleanup from all along I-15 through all the communities. Hurricane and St. George is on board. I heard today St. George might have up to 200 of their employees to help clean up, and I'm like, wow, that's a lot. I don't think we have that many. So, but I think we'll get together and decide what we can do to help, and I think we'd welcome any community members that want to come out as well. And we're doing the best we can, but it just keeps coming. We're just a busy city now, so we don't want it to end up like some of our neighboring towns out of our state. And so we just got to keep and do the best we can, and remember to tarp your loads on that. Yeah. When you are hauling, that's where most of it seems to be construction coming off. So, and our police department's watching that as well. As far as the flood control, we met last week. Councilman Martinson and me are on that board. They kind of just went over what the current projects that were coming up, and there's some flooding that's over. There were some reimbursement agreements with St. George City that were done last year. Perfect.
Did you say, did you say February 25th?
25th.
And you don't have,
They're thinking 7:30 to 9:30. I got off the phone with Love Where You Live earlier today, and that's what they're thinking. So, but there's a meeting tomorrow, and I might need your help, Jeremy, on working with me on that, and that they're still coordination things. So we'll get more update, but hopefully we can get on social media too, and on our side, and push from the city, and maybe we can get a good turnout. And I saw UDOT out there yesterday. I think it was UDOT was cleaning up the median, and that was one rule that they told us, that when we do these community cleanups, they won't allow us in the medians because they won't allow you to clean up they won't let you cross the traffic. So we're like hitting these edges, but the medians are hard, so they have to do the median. But maybe if we get some more help from UDOT on this big cleanup, we can get in the median with them and help too. So hopefully it'll make it look pretty for all the vacationers to come down and enjoy our city. Well, I appreciate that. I know I certainly get plenty of citizen feedback with concerns about keeping, Telegraph and most recently I-15 clean from trash and debris. So we definitely appreciate your efforts on that board, and we also look forward to getting behind that Love Where You Live initiative and do what we can. I know I'll put that on my schedule. I think most of us will be out there and do what we can to do our part, and we would invite anyone in the community there as well. Any updates on Power Board? I think they met last week as well. They did, but I had a conflict with flood control. Okay. So I asked Rick and Jeremy to step in for me. So if they have anything to commit, and I think it's just an update of where we're at, and that you saw the Rick sent out what is it? It's the UAMPS updated letter. That's yeah. So that letter's great. So. And another thing that's really nice with all of our public meetings, whether it be the Power Board or this council meeting or the Planning Commission, is most of these meetings, in fact, all those meetings are, unless they're held outside of the council chambers, which sometimes happen, but those are broadcast live on YouTube, and then they're recorded so that you can go back and watch those. So I find it effective sometimes to go back and watch those, but maybe put it on 1.5 or 2 times speed to get through them a little faster. But yes, we certainly want the public to be part of public meetings. Let's continue on. I think Councilmember Henderson, any updates on your assignments and committees?
Yes, Mayor. We had 2 fantastic meetings last week. Our Planning Commission had a training by Council Segmiller, and it was fantastic. He did a great job, as always, so he's great to have on staff. I also had a Shade Tree Committee meeting, which was fantastic. I came away from that meeting knowing that we have fantastic employees that really care about this city. They care about how the city looks. Also, they talked about how they're working really hard on being water conservative. And they talked about some of the projects they've done, some of the projects that they have scheduled to do to save water. And I really appreciate them leading the way that way. And then just a side note, today at the hardware store, the guy told me that they are selling a lot of tarps and straps. So Councilman Coates, you are a good tarp salesman. So
that's what I'm here for.
Excellent.
I just wish I owned investments in tarps and straps.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not hesitant to forward those emails to the Councilman Coates.
Maybe just in addition to Councilmember Henderson's comments, the council will be seeing an amendment to the city's shade tree ordinance. It's going to modernize and add some elements that we don't currently have. And as you know, the shade tree assignment is one that I enjoy a lot. We discussed in the last meeting where Council Member Henderson was present, perhaps getting the Parks Department on an agenda to give a report of some of the water saving projects that they've done. They're quite interesting and still beautify the city, but also conserve water. So maybe in an agenda or two, we'll see that.
Wonderful. Thank you, Council Segmiller. Let's move on to Councilmember Casperson.
Well, I've already brought this up before, but the active transportation tour on bikes, we have a date in mind, April 6th. I don't know if you guys, but that will work for our workshop. And we'll get you guys some electric bikes, those that want that.
That's wonderful. We did that before, and it's a great event. Have you talked about where we might ride on that, or?
They were kind of discussing some ideas for that. And then they also voted on and approved a tune-up station today, so.
Fantastic. That is a great committee. We're glad that you're serving there.
Yeah, it was great to get to know all of them today.
So they're going to be presenting in a workshop for us to go check out the route. Is that what the plan is, or?
They have some ideas in mind about like the different layouts of roads and with the bike lanes and just the design that we'll be doing. And so once our goal was to try to figure out a date and then go with the plan.
Okay.
So.
Wonderful. Is there anything else you have to share? Okay, we'll move on to Councilmember Martinson.
So Councilmember Coates already covered the flood control, so I won't cover that. It was a very exhilarating meeting. The exhilarating meeting we had was with the Youth Council, and so I had the opportunity last week to spend some time with them in their executive council meeting before this meeting started, and then we had the opportunity to spend Sunday night with them doing a tour with Senator Ipsen, Senator Vickers, and Representative Brooks, and that was extremely insightful, and it was super fun just to spend time with Carmen and Sherry and Mr. Cox and the Youth Council. And then we spent Monday morning with the Youth Council, another tour of the Capitol. We got introduced by the Senate, by the House, and spent some time, ate some breakfast, ate some lunch, and just got to know each other a little bit more. And it's exciting to see the youth in our community really stepping up and really participating. It makes me excited for future generations, and I think we're in really good hands. So, and then the other committees have not yet met. So that's my report.
Wonderful. Thank you, Council Member. I'll give an update on my assignment. So with the Washington City Economic Development, there is a lot of positive activity, but nothing to announce just yet. We'll build some suspense before we announce other things. With the Washington County Water Conservancy District, I have several items I'd like to report back to the council and make the public aware of. Primarily is that the continued dry weather is taking a toll on snowpack across Utah, with snow water equivalents for several basins dipping below median for this time of year. They call it SNOTEL, SNOTELL, or EL. That's the snow water equivalent. It dropped to 111% of normal in southwestern Utah as of yesterday, which seems to be good because it's above 100%, right? Well, as of January 19th, we were at 159%. So you can see how quickly the snowpack is drying up in the mountains. So that's a big concern for all of us water managers and those interested in conserving water. As we continue through winter and into spring, we will hope and pray for more snow in the mountains and rain in the valleys to fill our reservoirs and our wells and our aquifers for the summer. Best practice for landscape watering from November through February continues to be once or preferably none. That's what I'm doing in my yard per week for both sprinklers and drip irrigation. Our meeting last week, as a board, we approved bids for the Cotton Well number 3 drilling and well development project and the Ash Creek tributaries pipeline project for the Toker Reservoir. So locally, we are doing what we can to be wise stewards of the water. This council also met last week and is making great progress on a landscape conservation ordinance that's coming along. As a district, we're hopeful for all of municipalities who participate in the district to have a similar ordinance.
And I just wanted to note, Mayor, that that's for new development, not existing.
It's a great point, Councilmember. Yes, that ordinance applies to new development. Dixie MPO Executive Council, we are working on a regional transit plan that takes us out 20, 30 years on transportation on various modes of transit. The Dixie Regional Transportation Expo was a success. We especially appreciate our employees, Andy and Paul, for being over there and representing us so well. They showed exhibits and answered questions about roads, specifically about progress on Washington Dam Road and the extensions and realignments east and west on 3650 South as it ties into St. George to the west and as it ties into SR7 to the east, among other projects. We really appreciate their representation, but more so appreciate all of the hard work they're doing to keep up with the roads that we need.
Mayor, do you care if I add to that? We actually got that brought up at our meeting today about the Washington Dam Road, and Andy said that they are expecting to have it paved tentatively by summertime. So I thought maybe some of you that drive on that road would like to know that.
No, that's a great input. Andy does such a good job on that committee, and I know he's got those contractors working in different sections along that road to speed that up as fast as he possibly can. And then lastly, another booth that was over there was a UDOT booth that hosted Horrocks Engineering, where they showed exhibits and information about the I-15 widening that's happening just north from about exit 10 through around mile marker 12 or 13, and the exit 11 interchange. So they have some preliminary design and renderings on those. With the cost of building and construction, there's some concern with what we can get for what dollars have been allocated. But we really appreciate the leadership of our Public Works Director, Mike Shaw, and the relationships he has with the engineers and with UDOT in working for what will be the best we can possibly get as that interchange comes onto our Buena Vista Boulevard and onto our Main Street. So we continue to be aware of that and watch that. Are there any other announcements from this body that ought to be brought forward, or any other reports from assignments and committees? Seeing none, we'll move on to item 4, City Manager Report.
Thank you, Mayor. Would like to announce that the budget process has begun for the city. We're on a fiscal year budget, as you know, that begins in July of 2022 and runs until June of 2023. So Mr. Brown, our finance director, and I have been starting work on that process, and each of the department heads have been compiling their budget information, and we've been meeting with them. So the plan is to present that to the council in April, and if all goes well, have that budget approved by May and move on with the next year's budget. I would give you just a little update on the Power Board. Power Board meets and discusses all the issues that pertain to power for Washington City, so more or less our residents north of the Virgin River. The big issue with Power Board, as it's going to be with every power company this summer, are increasing power rates. And so we're working really hard to identify sources and purchase needed power for this summer, but try to do it at some rates that are positive for the community. So that's the big issue that we're working on, and that concludes my report, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Red. We really appreciate you. Let's move on to item 5. Are there any declarations and or abstentions and conflicts to declare? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to a lengthy consent agenda. And just by way of practice on the consent agenda, if there is an item that would have more than a clarifying question or simple comment, then we would ask that a motion and a second with a vote be made to pull that out of the consent agenda. And we would continue through the consent agenda and then address that item if there's any items that the council would like to speak on specifically.
Would you like that before you read them all
I'll
off,
go
or do
ahead
you
and
wanna
read through
them off?
those, and if there's questions that want a deeper dive, we'll pull those out. But that'll be the manner that we'll do that. And that's, Council Segmiller, is that consistent with your thoughts?
Yes.
Item 6A, item 6 is consent agenda. Item 6A is the board audit report, and this would be to approve the board audit report for, from January 2022. Item 6B would be to approve the minutes from city council meetings of 1/26/22 and 2/2/22. Item 6C is a final plat. Item 6CI, final plat, would be to approve a final plat for Frontier subdivision located at approximately 2000 East Washington Dam Road. Item 6D, special events. Item 6DI is consideration to approve a special event for the 2022 Southern Utah Half Marathon. Item 6DII is consideration to approve a special event for the Lake to Lake Relay. Item 6E is local consent. Item 6EI is consideration to approve a restaurant, liquor, and bar license for Coral Cafe and Entertainment located at 2400 North Town Center Drive in Coral Canyon. At this time, I will call for a motion to approve the consent agenda or to remove an item from the consent agenda and have discussion on it.
Mayor, I'd like to move I have some comments on the minutes from 1/26/22. I'd like to move that
Okay,
out of the consent agenda.
all right. Are you making a motion, council member?
A motion.
Okay, I have a motion by council member Coates to remove the minutes of 1/26/22 from the consent agenda.
I second that motion.
I have a second by council member Henderson. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, item 6B, minutes of the 1/26/22 council meetings have been removed from this consent agenda. At this time, I will call for any brief comment, question on the rest of the consent agenda or a vote to approve the consent agenda.
Yes, Mayor, I just have one question on the last item on the consent agenda. It's a consideration to approve a restaurant liquor and bar license. Now, is this an existing license that we are reapplying, or is it's not a new license, is it?
It's an existing business.
Okay. That's all I have, Mayor. Thank you.
And I would add that this is the typical way for local consent to be granted.
Yeah, you'll recall in December, we brought other alcohol licenses through for local consent. At that time, I asked the council to pull this one off for further review. At this point, staff's worked with the applicant. We've got better information, and our recommendation is that it be approved.
So we just reinstate their old license.
Correct.
Thank
Well, it's not a reinstatement, it's a renewal, but yes.
Renewal,
A previous license holder will have if approved, will have a license for the upcoming year.
Thank you. Call for a motion on the consent agenda.
Mayor, I'll make a motion that we approve the consent agenda as outlined.
I have a motion by Coates,
Second.
second by Martinson. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Moving on to item 6B, minutes for the 1/26/22 council meeting. Councilmember Coates, your questions.
Yeah, so the question I had is going through these minutes, I just have a few things well, more than a few. As we go through these minutes, it looked like we have they kind of seem like bullet points of what was said, and there was a lot said on this particular item. Starting on page 11, it has me saying one thing, and you all know I said a lot more than one thing in that meeting. So I just want a little more detail on this one because it was a lot of concern for us. So I think we need to do a little more concern. And then on the motion, I think we're missing some detail on what we're talking about. And I'll give you an example on, said North 300 East, an additional condition of a right-hand turn lane, but we also talked about pork chops on Telegraph, and so there was just right in, right out only on Telegraph. We just need all the detail we talked about in that, because this is the word that we're abiding by moving forward. So if we get this wrong, then it's hard for them to say, well, this is what I have to follow, because they might sell the property or not. So I'm asking on these, when there's a lot of, we need to just go a little more detail on what people said and through these meetings. So, and I apologize, I was gonna get with them sooner, but we were a little busy on Monday and Tuesday, so.
Wonderful. I think that's a great comment. I'm sure the recorder is happy to give that detail, and I think and every one of us would definitely agree that, especially on the motion, we need to have those conditions, and there were some specific to that. So we will, why don't I call for a motion to table the approval of those minutes? We'll have a conversation with the recorder, have those updated. I mean, the meetings are recorded. I think I would prefer to have those re-looked at and have those minutes updated, and then that brought back as part
Do you
of our
wanna
next consent agenda.
Move forward with the work session one, the 2-2, and approve those tonight, because I'm ready to move forward on those.
Okay? All right, I'll call for a motion.
I'll make a motion, we table the minutes for 1/26/22. Do I have to do two motions if I approve one?
However you'd like, Councilman. We'll have our council, Thad Saban, watch that and make sure we do it the right way.
Let me know, Thad.
You're doing great.
Okay, then we table the minutes for 1/26/22 to add the additional details requested and approve the minutes for 2/2/22.
I have a motion by Coates,
I'll second it.
and a second by Councilmember Casperson. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. We'll move on to item 7, which is RAP tax. Item 7A is consideration to approve an ordinance distributing the recreational arts and parks tax, or a portion of that. We'll look to our city manager, Jeremy Redd, for his presentation.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't know how much of a presentation it will be, but it's, we gotta get to the right spot here first. I'm glad this happens to me too, and not just everybody else. I think everybody recognizes what the RAP tax is. Our RAP tax is our recreational arts and parks tax that we collect. And we collect this every day. It's a tiny tax on the sales tax that we collect in our community. And those tax funds are for recreation, art, and parks projects. So currently the city has $1,243,268 in available RAP tax funds. Of that amount, $458,889 have been committed by the council for cultural facilities and arts. And that's looking forward to a new arts building or facility at some point. So we have a remaining $784,378 uncommitted and available to be applied for. Every 6 months, we ask for applications, and those entities that are eligible apply. This year, we had one application from Dixie State University Athletics. The description, some youth skills and activities. I think each of you saw that application in the amount of $5,000. So it would be my recommendation that we approve that based on your discussion and interest.
Any comment on that, council?
I guess what I saw is unique to this application as to previous RAP applications in years past was that they're actually providing direct programs and benefit to our citizens. Anything that I see where they would bring programs and involvement to our youth, I think everyone knows where I'm at on that. So I appreciate the fact that they're not only asking for money, but really it's funding what they're doing for our city. And I fully support this RAP tax request.
Is there a representative here tonight or no? Was it? Oh,
Would you like to come forward and say something? And then if you'd just state your name for the record, and I see you sporting the Dixie State Trailblazer tie.
Absolutely. Former player, so I have to. So.
There we go.
Good afternoon, Council and Mayor. My name is Matt Polifka with Trailblazer Athletics. First, we just wanted to just say how excited we are for Trailblazer Athletics and into the new Division I and the ever-expanding Western Athletic Conference. And with that, our friends from the North Southern Utah University, which will be hopefully a long-standing rivalry with most of our athletic events. We have seen obviously, as you guys know, growing community. With that is coming a growing campus life. We have multiple buildings on campus that are being erected for student housing, and then much improvements to our athletic facilities as well. And so with that comes new eyeballs and new people from around the country that Dixie State and St. George and Washington City and our surrounding areas haven't seen before. So we're really excited about that. And one thing that needs to be noted as well is we have great partnerships with a lot of our community members. And one thing that we're excited about with this is continuing our partnership with you guys and showing our community that not only do we have the private sector with us and behind us of what we're doing for our athletic department, but also a local city. Thank you.
Just going to raise this just a little bit. No, I really appreciate your time, council members, and also Mayor. Thank you so much for allowing us to be able to speak with you. One of the things I wanted to expand on with what Matt was talking about, I probably should reference my name. My name's Cameron Chatwin. I'm also with Trailblazer Sports Properties. I used to play for Dixie State and actually graduated in 2020, and I'm grateful to be able to be working with them.
If you've been to a game this year, you'll notice that Cameron now dances for Dixie State.
I do. The 6'9" frame can move its body.
We need a demonstration.
If you play some music, I can do that for you. So, no, I'm really grateful. Like Matt was talking about, we have had a lasting partnership for 17 years, and we're super, super grateful for that, just because of the representation that the city has with the university as well. Something that we have been doing has been pretty profound is with a lot of our youth in this city, and with that, they've actually created a program with our student athletes that have been going to certain different schools, and I'm just pulling up some notes here from that. Pardon me for delaying a little bit, but it's called the Internet Safety Assembly. There's been 5 schools that have actually already been hinted at and have already participated in. Over 2,000 students will have gone through this, and what this stands for is it says Internet Safety Assembly Stop. It's stay kind, tell a trusted adult, only connect with real life friends, and protect personal information. And so something that we've been trying to do is getting really more heavily involved with the city and especially with our student athletes and also our youth. The youth are extremely, extremely important to us, so we want to be able to do that. We definitely have with our partnership some opportunities such as game sponsorships and different things that we'd love to invite you to. We've been giving tickets to Shelly Griffin, a wonderful lady that I've been able to coordinate with on those. We actually have a baseball home game series that we have for 100 game season tickets for you guys as well. And then other things that are in place with our partnerships, such as recognition of signage and different events. And so really grateful for the time that you've been giving us, and we definitely would be grateful for the approval of this RAP tax to be able to help us continue this partnership.
So I do have a question for you.
Councilmember, go ahead.
What are you going to other communities too and applying for their RAP tax as well?
No, transparency, yes, we are.
Good. I'm just saying good.
Yep,
I
no,
wanna make sure
transparency,
you're-
yes, absolutely.
That's great. I'm glad you are. So I was just going to recommend you do that if you haven't. So that's why I wanted to check. So appreciate that.
Thank you, Councilmember Coates.
Cameron, Matt, we appreciate you. We appreciate our relationship and longstanding relationship with Dixie State, and I'm confident that someone will make a motion here that will approve that funding.
Mayor, if you're ready for a motion, I'd be happy to make
Please,
that if the
Councilmember.
council's ready for that. Make a motion that we approve RAP tax funding to Dixie State Athletics in the amount of $5,000 and wish them the very best.
Second.
We have a motion by Ivy, a second by Coates. All in favor?
Aye.
And that funding passes unanimously. We look forward to continued partnership with Dixie State Trailblazers. Moving on to item 8 is award of bid. Item A is a consideration to award the bid for the 2022 Slurry Sill project. And we'll look to Assistant Public Works Director Andy Stevens.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council. So on February 1st, we opened our bids for our annual maintenance program. And we had 4 bidders, and the apparent low bidder was Intermountain Slurry Sill. And we recommend that you approve their bid.
Hey, Andy, Before I call for a motion to approve that bid, we talked a little bit about, last night about the timing and the scope of this. This is a pretty big slurry sill project. Would you
Right.
just talk a little bit as to the areas? I know it's primarily north of the river and up into Green Spring and out into Crow-Canyon.
Right,
But
so
can
there
you
should
talk
be,
to that?
should be some maps in your packet that I put in there, so you
Yeah,
know where
those
they're
are
at.
great.
And so we're concentrating north of the river this year, and it's a little over 500,000 square yards, so it's a pretty big project. It's one of the biggest ones that we've done for a while.
Fantastic.
It's a lot of road, so.
A lot of roads.
But I really appreciate the Public Works Department that makes our roads last longer. Putting those slurries down every, about 6-7 years now. I don't know
Yeah,
what the time frame is, but
We're getting all the 6-year stuff done, and all the 7 and a lot of the 6 years.
yeah. So that's just super helpful for making our roads last and spreading our dollar better for long term, because it's way more money to repave them than to slurry them. And so,
Yeah, we were just talking about that earlier. Do you mind just saying what you were telling me about like the costs and?
Yeah, so when I was explaining to her, so when you build a road, it starts at 100% in 0 years, and you expect it to last 30 years, right? So it's going to drop off on a curve. So you try to catch it at that 5 years, and then you buy 5 years, so you jump the curve up, and then it extends the life of your road out past the 30 years. You could get 50, 60 years. As long as you keep up on the maintenance, it should extend the life of the road.
Well, that's great. I really appreciate the way we've had a maintenance plan in effect for a number of years and the commitment of this city and this council to funding that. Any further questions for Mr. Stevens?
Andy, if I might, is the crack sealing project that's been underway, is that preparing those surfaces?
Yeah, so
in
we-
hope that the slurry gets approved?
Yeah, so that's, I come up with the slurry plan where I want to go, and then the city crews go out and crack seal everything prior to the slurry treatment going down.
So, Mr. Stevens, just for clarification for our citizens, this is not a service that we do in our city. We found that it's far cheaper and better for the city to hire this out. They have the equipment, and is that your understanding?
Yeah, we don't own the equipment to do a slurry project. It's a specialized truck that comes in. It's a specialized treatment. So, and pretty much all the 4 bids that we got are the contractors in the general area that bid all the time on it. So,
well, what's nice is we're getting low bid. So they're competing against each other and not us having to incur the costs of maintenance and keep up on those machines that we don't use every day.
right.
We use a short time. So it's a good question. And I
I'm just
like it.
pleased we got 4 bids.
Yeah.
That is a good point.
You're confident in Intermountain Slurry Sill?
Yeah, they've done projects for us in the past. So,
They finish it up, they get the punch list done, and
yeah, they're good.
good. Further questions and or a motion for Mr. Stevens?
I'll make a motion that we approve the bid for Intermountain Slurry Sill for the amount of $649,560.60.
We have a motion by Coates,
I second it.
second by Henderson. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
We'll take a 15-minute break in order to accommodate any of those who may be coming at 5 p.m. for the public hearing. o'clock, we will resume this meeting. We'll move on to item 9, public hearings. And as a reminder to the council on resolutions and ordinances, we'll do a roll call vote, and I just tend to do that in random order. Just as to make note, we always allow public comment to be submitted electronically prior to a meeting, and that happens until 5 p.m. the day before the meeting. And so that's one of the ways that we allow the public to provide their input and their comments on an agenda item, whether they're able to be here in person or not. So item 9A is a public hearing and consideration to approve a resolution amending the 2021-2022 fiscal year budget. And before I call our finance director up, I'd just like to ask by a raise of hand, how many individuals are here to make public comment on the resolution amending the budget? Okay, I didn't think so, but I thought I might just ask that. So just to kind of let you know how this will go is I'll invite the finance director, Brian Brown, to present to the council. Once he's completed his presentation, I will open it up for questions from the council to the finance director. After they've asked their questions, I'll open up the public hearing. We would love to listen to any comments you may have. Once the public hearing is closed, I'll turn back to the council for further discussion and then a motion. So with that said, I'll invite Brian Brown to come up to speak to item 9A.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Staff is proposing a budget amendment for the fiscal year 2021/2022. And in your packet, I included a budget summary. As Steve, are you on? Can you bring that up for me, please?
Maybe go ahead while he's bringing it up.
All right, and then so I included a budget summary and also a detailed budget summary by account number. And so in this budget summary, the budget we're proposing is $102 million. And some of the items that we're on there that we have, there's 3 new hires. There's a telegraph property for $90,000, the cemetery phase 3, the Hurricane Valley fire station. So part of the debt service, we need to pay for the debt reserve fund, so we're including that. And then the Trailblazer athletic sponsorship, and then there's power cost, an increase for power cost. Now, just so you know, the power cost increase adjustments for expense were about $1 million, but also with that there was about $1 million in revenue increase as well. And then on items in your packet I show the 2 prior budget adjustments. So that's what comes to the $102 million. Do you have any questions about this budget adjustment for me?
Council, questions for finance director?
Mayor, I probably have a question for Rick Hansen, if he happens to be here.
You're on the hot seat, Rick.
Figured I might be.
So Rick, it's listed here $1,100,000 for power cost increase. Would you just share your information on that, just so we can kind of gauge what this means and what maybe our summer's going to mean for us?
Well, I think it's an indication that it's a rough time right now to be short on resources in the power industry. And at the same time that the power costs are going up, we're growing at a very high rate. And so those 2 things compounding together ended up, and that's my best guesstimate at this point in time, about halfway through the budget year. The 2 big months, July and August, we've made it through. We know what those numbers are. The next big one will be in June. So to give you a comparison, this last summer, on the open market, we bought a high load hour product for about $150. This coming summer, it looks like it'll be closer to $250. And so we'll be working with Jeremy and Brian on some possible options for the upcoming fiscal year as well. So we're not alone. I don't know if that makes you feel any better, but as plants are retired, particularly coal plants across the west, the amount of resource out there is shrinking. The hydro situation isn't helping. There's predictions that some of the dams could be shut off from producing towards the latter part of the summer. That means we don't get a lot of power from the dams, but what that means is those that do now have to look elsewhere to get that power, and it's a supply and demand effect on that. So, and then we have this coming summer, we had 2 resources we had planned on being online for us in July, but they're being moved back till November. Of course, you won't see that effect until the next budget year, but those are the basic reasons of what's going on as supply is shrinking and demand's increasing.
How's our generators helping us out?
Last year, if we were about $150 a megawatt hour if you took our fixed costs and variable costs. So it was competitive with the market. We run them in the summer. And so I'm grateful to have those. And they'll be running pretty hard June, July, and August again this year.
We get about 6 megawatts out of those.
Correct. And that's just a little over 10% of our load.
Rick, is there any new projects coming on solar or wind or heat recovery or anything that we have to look forward to?
We'll have 2 solar projects that come on in December of this year. And then we have another project called Enchant that will be on in November. And that's a coal-fired plant, but they're going to put carbon sequence. How do you say that? Yeah, that fancy word. Carbon capture on that plant in a couple years. And so it'll have a green component with that as well. And so those are the next 3 that will be coming on. And Enchant and Steel, or the Red Mesa Solar, were the 2 projects I mentioned that we had anticipated being on in July, that their start date effectively got shifted back. And again, the main impact of that will be on the next fiscal year, not this one.
So this $1 million on the budget essentially is increased costs. So we account for the cost and the revenue that comes in from those paying for it.
Correct. And as Brian mentioned, revenues increased because of the load increase. So fortunately, they're fairly comparable. It's not an exact million, but it's pretty close.
Further questions for Rick Hansen? Councilmember Henderson?
Sure. I like on here how it says you guys negotiated a lower price on a used bucket truck. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. Up until this last year, we had our largest bucket truck couldn't reach all of our transmission structures, so we needed one that could. And they run probably 400 to 500,000, brand new one, and we don't use it a lot. And so we pursued and had an opportunity to buy a used truck. And we had the bed repainted and had the hoses gone through. And so we're going to be about 145,000. And we had originally budgeted about 200 or so. And there's been some other repairs that went along with that. So again, trying to be as frugal as we can and still meet our needs.
I think that's awesome. So thank you.
Me as well.
Seeing no additional questions, well, thank you, Rick. We appreciate you doing your best there. Council, any additional questions in regards to this quarterly budget amendment? Seeing no additional questions, I'll call for a motion or further discussion and/or a motion.
Did we close the public hearing?
Oh, thanks for the reminder. Still a rookie mayor. I'm counting in months, no longer in days. So at this time, I will open the public hearing, and I don't anticipate anyone coming forward unless you have something to say now that you didn't have to say 5 minutes ago. Okay, seeing no public comment, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing. And now I will turn to the council for further discussion and/or a motion.
So I have one question. It's for Council Segmiller. On the resolution, they just say XX in our packet. Is that not going to have a number?
Yeah, the number will be added on the signature copy. And so whatever that number is, and the recorder might know what that is offhand.
I'm
But
just
yeah,
surprised we don't have, I swear we used to have them where we have the number, so we would just
We
say.
typically don't put the number on them anymore because it would get out of order in the system. So until it's approved, we generally don't assign them a number, so they go in order in case it doesn't get approved in the meeting.
I think we're on 07 though. Is that correct, Tara?
Let me look at it. It is 07.
So for those of you wondering where the voice is coming from, that is our city recorder, Tara Pence, who does a wonderful job. And she's taking minutes and listening as we're going along there. But she's absolutely right. That XX is a placeholder until the resolution is actually approved.
So in the future, we just ask for it like this, I think will work. So we can, or do you want me to, in the motion, I'm just trying to be clear.
In the motion, if you would say 07 in place of XX.
But we don't have to have that number. You could also just say approve the resolution
Yeah.
regarding the budget opening, and she'll add the number later. Which
She knows the number. It's sequential.
We draft them with XX to avoid the confusion of not everybody knowing exactly which one we're on. We make sure that on signature copies that's completed.
It's just nice to do it in the minutes and record that which one it is, so we can trace it later. That's why I was asking for clarification. But with that, I will make a motion that we approve the resolution amending Washington City Resolution R 2022-07 with the budget, updated budgets for $102,398,821.
I have a motion by Coates,
Mayor, I will second that.
a second by Ivy. This is a resolution. We'll go roll call vote. Ivy,
Aye.
Casperson,
Aye.
Coates,
Aye.
Henderson,
Aye.
Martinson.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. The budget has been amended. Thank you, Finance Director Brian Brown, and all of those who worked on that budget amendment. Moving on to item 9B, which is a public hearing and consideration to approve an ordinance for zone change Z-21-26, PUDC, Planned Unit Development Commercial, Design and Use located at Washington Fields Road and 2000 South. So I'm going to ask the same thing I did last time. By raise of hand, are there any who intend to make a public comment on this item? Great. Duly noted. In the interest of time, and this doesn't have to be a yes, but are there 2 or 3 individuals who could represent the views of the group? Okay.
We've met as a group and have delineated specific points and tried to keep it down to a clear, organized way of presenting our thoughts and ideas to you. I don't know we can go too much smaller.
Fantastic. So it looks like Mrs. Larkin and Mrs. Jones. Is there any that might also be a bit of a spokesperson? I'm sorry, I don't know your name. I should know. I know most of you, and I'm so grateful you're all here. Welcome to the public meeting. Nikki, okay. And okay, great. I can't quite hear you, but I'll get to you. Okay, so I will keep that in mind as we move into the public hearing. I'm just going to make some a few comments on the public hearing, just to make sure this is flows smoothly. So the first thing that I'd like to say is that there were 19 public comments that were received electronically on this item. All have been read by myself, and I'm confident each of these members of the council have also read those public comments. So to those of you who are going to make public comment this evening, I'd just like to ask you to remember a few things. If you could please state your name for the record when you come to the mic. if you could please keep your comments within the scope of this specific agenda item. And I know this doesn't need to be said, but I'll say it anyway. If you could please keep your comments professional and avoid any speech that may come across accusatory, degrading, or personal to any of the parties involved, staff, council, and the applicant. You're welcome to get as upset with me as you want, but I don't vote. I'm a believer that most intelligent comments can be made within about 2 to 3 minutes, and certainly anything over 5 minutes, unless you're one of the representatives, I'll probably let you know that your time's up, but I'll smile and do it in a nice but firm way. I want you to be assured that we take public comment very seriously. We recognize that we're elected to represent the citizens, and we're elected to represent the best interest of the city. We're each trying to do the best we can. While you're speaking, while we're listening, Mayor, myself, the council, and staff will be taking notes of your questions and your concerns while we listen, and we will address those after the public hearing is closed. I'll remember to open it and close it this time, I promise. And another thing that I probably don't need to say, but I will, having been in public service for some time now, please no clapping, standing, or making noise after comments. And also, please know that once a question or a concern has been brought up, that we recognize others may have the same concern or question, and that it's not necessary to be redundant on those items. I may ask for just a quiet raise of the hand for those that might agree with that comment. But anyway, so now to the council. A public hearing is the time to listen to the residents we represent and to consider their comments and their perspective. And I ask that you make notes of any questions you would like to ask or comments you would like to share, and that you would do that after the public hearing is closed. I will give the council plenty of opportunity to speak and deliberate before calling for a vote. And to the applicant, I will give you the opportunity to speak after staff's presentation, if you would like. I will also allow you to speak after the public hearing has been closed. And you get the same reminders as the staff, or as the residents who are here. State your name for the record when you come to the mic. Please keep your comments within the scope of the agenda item being considered. And I know you will, but please keep your comments professional and avoid any speech that may come across accusatory, degrading, or personal to any of the parties involved, staff, council, and especially residents. At this time, I will turn to our Community Development Director, Drew Element, to present on item 9B.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. The applicant is requesting approval of the design and use for their currently PUD commercial zone property, which is approximately 3.46 acres in size. Property is located approximately, as stated earlier, the northwest corner of Washington Fields Road and Sandia Road, or referred to times as 2000 South. The name of this particular portion of the master development area will be known as the Heritage Place Commercial. The property was granted the PUD commercial zoning at an earlier date, with the applicant knowing that they would have to come back to the city for the specific design and use approval at this particular corner. The applicant's now wishing to have this proposed project reviewed. The PUDC requires an approved site design before the property can be given a building permit and have that commercial development take place. The applicant is proposing to break the 3.46 acres into 3 areas of development, with one area being proposed with a 4-bay manual car wash with an associated 2-bay vacuum station as well. Another area is proposing a convenience store with a fueling station island consisting of 12 gas pumps, and lastly, a commercial plaza building consisting of 3 individual units. Staff had concerns originally, but they have expanded the project. They originally just brought the fueling station to the Planning Commission, and then were sent back for a month tabling to bring the entire project. So with that, staff's previous concerns on the project were kind of taken care of in bringing the whole project forward at one time. And with that, then staff's concerns have been addressed. The Planning Commission, by a vote of 3-2 after a public hearing, recommended, got tongue twister on that, denial of Z-21-13 for the specific design used to this already zoned plan unit development commercial. The reason for the denial was, and this is stated by them in their motion, although zoning allows a gas station and self-serve car wash, it is not appropriate for this location. Then this motion was passed on to you, the city council, again by that vote of 3-2 for denial, and again based on findings and subject to conditions in the report. I will just scroll through before I turn that back over to you council members and just kind of go through the exhibits. Of course, the first one is the site layout. This one just has some specific items about the landscaping, the lighting that will be used on here. And again, this is just layout of that three unit commercial plaza. And here's the elevations from front and one side of that, again, that threeplex commercial. And then this is the back views and the opposite side of elevations on that. This is the C-store footprint and the C-store elevations from the front and one side, then followed up by the elevations of the other side and the back view. This is kind of the footprint of the 12 pump island. And this is the canopy that's over those 12 pumps, more of a pitched roof kind of canopy instead of the flat rectangle ones that you see in most often. Then we get into aerials. This is kind of looking from Washington Fields Road from that entrance on that northeast kind of entrance, seeing that from an aerial view, followed up from the south view.
Hey, Drew, I think you have the old one up.
I kind of do. They're kind of saying, you want me to go to the other one because they have enhanced. I was going to say that. So if you will, we'll just go
make sure
there.
We're on the record. We're showing the one that they're presenting to us because they updated it based on comments from the Planning Commission. So I want to make sure we're.
And I'm glad you mentioned that. These are the things the Planning Commission wanted to see that weren't. So just to note, if you see where my little cursor is, the Planning Commission wanted those to be rock, kind of faux rock put at the base of those to dress that up. They've put that on. But again, this is that same view from that northeast corner. And then this is from the south with the deceleration lane added that wasn't originally on there. This is from that southeast portion, again, looking from basically the intersection if you're in an aerial view. Showing again the drive-throughs on that triplex on the plaza and the backside of the gas station proposed. Another view looking basically from the southwest corner, looking eastward and northward. And this is kind of a view just on that one portion where the gas station, so that's basically on the south looking north. This is again coming through the entrance off of Washington Fields Road into the project. Again, from the intersection view, just more of a ground level, not an aerial. And this is from the corner. The Planning Commission was concerned about not seeing signage, even though the condition was they'd have to follow the city signage. But I'm glad that they went with this because the city sign allows for different varieties. This is what they're proposing to you, which is probably one of the least obstructive sign choices that they could do.
Triangle.
What's that?
It's in the site triangle. It might be.
We'll work on that. I think they were just given view, so that this is the sign. So but yeah, they wouldn't get approval of that particular thing. They'll have to adjust it back a little bit. And then just the sign size itself with the finishes on it. So this is an updated aerial showing the pork chop out here. If you can see my little cursor off of Washington Fields Road coming in at that northeast corner. And then they added the deceleration lane down here off of Sandia Road. So they showed that upgrade. They actually showed in this particular view some stacking for the drive-throughs. That was a concern that the planning commissioners had, was stacking of cars. So they kind of gave you an example of that with the two different drive-up windows. This one stops right here in the inner one because that's where the drive-up window is. The others will come here and then they'll, when cleared, drive through, and then their drive-up window is down the side of the building. So this gives that updated version showing the sign out, but again, we'll fix that. They just have to be off the property a little bit, the pork chop, and also the deceleration lane off of Sandia Road. These are just, they had their traffic engineer give you a queuing sample on here. You needed to use that for the place on that commercial use. Just some more data on here of photometric plan. And then they're just finishing up car wash views. The layout of the bays. And again, we're getting into those elevations we kind of covered front and back. They didn't really change those from the Planning Commission, but this is the upgraded one we want you to make note of. But I wanted you to see the old one in there because in case questions from the Planning Commission, but they've just added the things that they felt the Planning Commission wanted to see as it goes to City Council. So I think we've looked at elevations, footprints, canopy, bay, and then they're just showing you the finishes of the product, the split face block, it's a tongue twister, the stucco and the tiles on the roof for the finished product. On the car wash, pretty much the same product out on the canopy. And then here's all your product list of the faux rock, stucco, tile roof, split face block, and etc. And then what is painted is they're giving you the Sherwin-Williams color and powder coating, and also for the signage. So just extended of that. And again, just keeping in from the previous one where the lights are and the locations of those on the, if you see them highlighted out there in red, is where these overhead lights will go. So
Drew,
there's your exhibits. I'll be glad to answer any
Drew,
questions.
is that the end of your presentation?
That's it.
Great. I'll turn to the council for questions for staff at this time.
Drew, is it possible to take your colored pen and kind of detail for us the traffic pattern on that drive-through? Maybe a little, like maybe take it and show us kind of where the cars would go.
You want me to go back to the one that showed the queuing, or you want me to go off of this one?
Either one.
Okay. I
can see where the cars are queued, but I'm a little confused as far as where they end up, how they exit.
Sorry, nobody get dizzy here. We don't have airbags in the seat in front of you. So hold tight here. We'll go with this view right here.
Do you want to zoom up on it, Drew, maybe, before you draw?
Oh, okay, just in that area, yeah. Oh, sorry, it already grabbed the pen. I gotta go with my mouse. Is that good enough for the zoom? Because I need a little bit of room, so. Okay, so this particular lane here, I'll just kind of go with red. Again, the window's right here. So they'll order somewhere out, there'll probably be a message board out here. They'll pick their product up. They can continue this way if they want to go to the C-store. They can't get out of the parking area this way. Or what they will do is come past this hashed out area that's a clear zone. Then they can head this way and then continue. And really the only way they could go out, it's a right in, right out, so they can either continue off over to Washington Fields Road through the right out, or they can head out of the parking lot this way and then go into the neighborhood, or head toward Sandia Road with a left here. And this particular aisle is pretty much the same in leaving. It's just that, let me get you a different color.
Is that in front of the nose of that car? Is that a raised concrete little bump there
It's
or
probably not
something?
I mean, they could raise it just to give but it's going to be a hashed out area. I think there's one over by Desert Hills High School is what I've been told.
Okay.
In that is it a KB's 66? There's also an area where the Little Caesars is. I haven't been to it, but I've been told that's one of a couple places that they've done this. So it's the hashed out, do not block, area. So these people that are leaving out of this drive-through, where my pencil is, they have no reason to stop there. They're just going to keep going and go out. So these cars will wait until they can pull in on this blue line, pick up through their drive-through, and then head out either, again, the same pattern to the right or the left and out. Now, again, you could make them do a little raised and even make it, stamped concrete, give it a little rumble type thing if you wanted, but the hash mark's probably going to be enough just to say do not block.
I'm talking about right in front of the nose of that car, the blue line. See the nose of that car?
Yeah, see, there's a kind of a pork chop.
Okay,
That's what
so
this
that
is where
is
my
a
pencil
raised
is.
concrete
It's going to
thing.
be a concrete area that has a bend to it. And they'll probably stripe these. I would imagine that they'll be striped well, just for their own purposes. We could even make it a condition that it needs to be well striped, but that's kind of how this 2-lane one works again, and which is nice because you have 2 lanes of stacking, keeping cars, in a 2-lane thing versus one long one.
Now, is that 2 drive-throughs? I notice each building says drive-through.
Yeah, but this first building doesn't. It says
It's not a
drive-through, but
drive-through.
unless they're going to try to get on this interior lane, it won't happen.
They could potentially merge a unit.
They could, like
There's only
McDonald's
2
type does or
drive-throughs.
something, but it'll just be right now it's proposed two lanes of traffic, I guess they could get real creative and have a split pickup window too, but no, but right now it's just made, basically for this middle unit, outside unit is what's being portrayed. Just so I hope that answers your question. And then they can exit out anyway. Any other questions?
Any further questions for staff?
I have questions, but I think I'll wait until, give the chance for everyone.
Great. Okay, seeing no additional questions for staff, at this time, would the applicant like to share any information or wait until after the public hearing? Okay, sounds good. At this time, I will go ahead and open up the public hearing on item 9B, and we'll just remind you to state your name when you come to the mic.
Hello, my name is Nicole Loftman, and I live in Desert Meadows, which I could point to it on the map, but instead I'll just say that it's right next to the double churches in Washington Fields, which most people know where that landmark is. And the reason I bring that up is because it is 353 feet away from the convenience store. And that is a problem because convenience stores sell alcohol, and there is a proximity limitation. I'm going to read just the first part but I have a copy for everybody to read later on. This is 3-2-13. No alcoholic beverage license shall be granted for any premises located within 600 feet of any public or private school, church, public library, public playground, or park. If you add in to the front door of the convenience store, that's an extra 200 feet. That still does not add up to 600 feet. There is a reason why this has been in place since 1998, and many other cities have this. It is a safety issue of having alcohol that close to churches. It's a bad precedent to change it. There is a variance made in subsection D where changes can be made if there's peculiar and exceptional practical difficulties or exceptional and undue hardships. I don't believe having a convenience store or lack thereof having no convenience store would create a hardship for the community that lives right there in Washington Fields. Anyways, there's a lot of other people. I have maps for everybody, which shows you the proximity. And I will leave it at that for you all.
Nicole, thank you for your comment and for your well presentation. I appreciated your smile, so I've taken note that this regarding the state statute and the serving of alcohol, the distance from the location to the church. Thank you.
Mary Ann Jones. I've asked my husband to pass out the paperwork so that we save on a little time here for everyone. Just want to make sure, city council members, that each of you received my packet from Mr. Klein from the Community of Environmental Defense Services, and we're able to read through that. There's a lot of information there that we don't want to take up time, but it also is a huge explanation of our concern for this property. So when I presented at the Planning Commission meeting afterwards, the comments that were made, I realized that my concerns were not in the exact location that I was concerned about benzene emissions for the gas station. So in your packet, I have a couple of pictures. This one is from Maverick. Actually, both of them are Maverick at Dino Crossing. If you notice, there are vent emissions or vent pipes at the top of those locations. The third one is actually the vents at Smith's in the same location. So vent pipes look differently depending on where those tanks are stored, and that is my concern as to where the vent emissions are coming from, is from those vents. The 2019 study that you were provided with made it clear that the emissions from those vents extended to 524 feet from the property. And it also made it clear in that study that, or in all of the studies that I sent, that benzene causes cancer, anemia, other health concerns. I've also run across things most recently about fertility issues in men and women. So there are a lot of health effects that are caused from benzene. I was in a meeting and someone mentioned that those pipes were high enough that the benzene escaped from them and went up, and no one was affected by it. Well, benzene is heavier than air. Air is rated at 1, benzene is 2.8. So there's no way benzene can come out and go up. It comes out and goes down, and that's where the researchers were able to measure that those levels. We reached out to the Utah Division of Air Quality Control, and I just right as we were walking out the door, received the message from Joel Thomas from that branch in Salt Lake that Utah does not have any filters or emission controls on vents in the state of Utah. So there's nothing preventing that gas and the benzene from coming out and spreading out to the community. Sometimes I think that we think that if we don't smell it, that it's not a problem. One of the things that I ran across was that there's no safe level of benzene. They kind of have put a 1 part per billion, which is 0.001 per million on benzene. And if you smell it, it's between 1.5 and 4.7 parts per million. So the exposure is extreme by the time you smell benzene at a gas station. There are, they thought that putting controls in cars would help with the benzene emission as we filled up and things, but they have run studies showing that the onboard fueling vapor recovery systems were not very effective. I think it was like, oh, there it is. The researchers found that 88% of vehicles monitors released vapors during refueling, despite the presence of onboard refueling vapor recovery systems, so they're not effective as well. There are a lot of issues with it. So the other issue that we come to then is idling cars, which go with the drive-through situation. There's a 2001 study. I have included it in your packet. It's at the very back. And I will just go to the back page of that. It states that service stations and major roads were the primary contributor to residents' exposure of benzene. In addition, residents close to major roads and service stations were exposed to elevated indoor and outdoor pollutant levels. And so that's what this study talks about, is how the levels are higher in the homes of people within 324 feet of that station. So we're getting a double whammy inside and out. The other thing that I had there is in the information that I gave you, or that came to your emails, there's the map that shows the 500 feet radius that is serious exposure radius, and then the 1,000 feet that shows where even schools should not be built because it's harmful to children. I put in there because there will be children living in that area. The next page, when I looked at this, I thought what was interesting, you see my subdivision here and the two subdivisions here and a little bit of Canterwood. Boy, my hands are shaky, sorry. But what you don't see is what's on the next page. And if you will look at that, these are the approved homes for Heritage Place. There are 60 townhomes within that 500 feet, 6 patio or garden homes, and another 19 homes. And I know this is too small for you to see, but here is the full plan in the 1,000 feet. Excuse me. What you miss is a couple of townhomes here and a couple of down here. So basically that whole subdivision is in that too. So there are a lot of people affected by that. So we, Mr. Klein from the Seeds Department set up a system so it could be honest and fair. There is in your packet a petition of those who signed and had concerns about benzene in their areas. That has been updating each day as people are getting the word out, and we have a lot in that area who are concerned with that. But as you can see, the people in this area, we need to have concern for them too. And they're not able to sign because they don't live there yet. So also, the next page shows the location of those who have signed, and then there is comment from each of the signers that you can read at your leisure or quickly, whichever the case may be. And so I guess my question to the council is how are we going to protect the health of those who live within 500 feet of this proposed gas station?
Thank you, Mrs. Jones. Is there anything else you'd like to add? I've let you go longer because you're a group representative, and certainly I can see that you've represented a couple of neighborhoods there.
Right.
Is there any?
I'm sure I could go on for days. The more I've learned about benzene, the more concerned I have become.
Well, we appreciate this. Is there anything else you'd like to add to this? How many signatures did you count this number of signatures that you had on here?
78 to date.
78 signatures, okay. Mm-hmm. And before
With that, I would note, though, I noticed some signed husband and wife on the same line, so. But, yeah.
And again, keeping the decorum of a meeting like this, just by a quiet raise of hand in the audience who shares the health safety concerns that Mrs. Jones has discussed. Okay. Thank you. I didn't ask for that with Nicole's comments. She had made a comment about the alcohol sales and the distance to residential and church. Who else, by quiet raise of hand, shares those concerns? Okay, thank you.
I did have one quick thing, if I could. It's been amazing to me also to look at OSHA's studies on benzene, and they talk about exposures from less than 5 years to more than 30 can cause cancer. So it can be a short time. And then also I found that they also, for gas station attendants, they limit working hours to 8 hours. So for those of us who are there all day, I hate to say that I'll be retiring soon, but that is probably the case. And so we're there 24/7 without that break that even workers can have from a gas station.
Well, thank you, Mrs. Jones. You've been very well spoken. We certainly appreciate the information that you've shared, and we recognize the those who share those concerns, who have signed. We appreciate you very much. Thank you. Please, Lenny, Mr.
Leonard
Jones.
Jones. I just real quickly wanted to propose, and I don't know what steps have to be taken to get an ordinance going to protect not only the people here and those that are coming in, but for future developments, when there's a future gas station being put in, can an ordinance be put into place? I know years ago we did picketing to stop an inappropriate business down in Mesquite happening. And during that time, most of the cities did not have any ordinances to protect, meaning St. George, Washington, Ivins, all of them didn't have ordinances in place. And so they quickly got them in place to protect the people against those types of businesses. And I'd propose that we really look seriously about that for this area for safety too. Thank you.
Duly noted. Thank you, Mr. Jones.
Hello, Mayor and City Council members. My name is Karen Brown, and I live in Desert Meadows. My husband and I watched the Planning Commission meeting a couple weeks ago, and one of the Planning Commission members asked at the end of public comment, what would you like to see there? So it was a very impromptu question.
Can you just pull that mic down a little bit? Our recorder, wherever she is she's taking notes.
Is that better?
That's great. Thank you, Karen.
So it was a very impromptu question, and I don't think a lot of the people that made public comment had an opportunity to really think that through. So my husband and I and some other neighbors had gotten together, and we are asking that the developer, the owner of the property, consider low impact, not high impact, which is what is the proposal ahead of us. So things that could be included into a low impact commercial space, granted, that's what it is. We understand that there's something commercial going in there. Could be something like a boutique shop, something like a bakery. You know, bakeries are the staple of America, and our grocery store bakeries don't always meet the needs of a neighborhood. So something special like that, which would encourage gathering and the building of a neighborhood community. An ice cream shop. Families are an important part of a customer base for an independent ice cream shop, and this would be in the heart of a neighborhood. We have 6 gas stations within 3 miles of us, Desert Meadows, and those gas stations are all on the outskirts of our neighborhood. None of them exist in the middle of a residential neighborhood. So another low impact possibility that could be presented would be a barbershop or a hair salon. Limited hours, but still, you know, lots of conversations happen at barbershops. I thought about something this morning, an indoor pickleball place. We don't have indoor pickleball. Pickler is opening up on St. George Boulevard. I just passed it today. And pickleball is growing for both old and the aging population and youngsters. So we don't have many places to have indoor pickleball. So that would be something else, a pet grooming place, a small cafe, a sandwich shop. So I understand, and I think all of us, our greatest concern as a neighborhood and community is the potential of high impact going in there. We understand that it's commercially zoned, but we would like to see something that's going to build a neighborhood and be low impact, and that's what we're asking you to consider.
Thank you, Karen.
Thank you.
Duly noted. Thank you very much. And we have another one of our community representatives here, and remind us your name.
My name is Nikki Van Orman.
Nikki Van Orman, welcome.
Good evening. I'm here representing our kids. In the Desert Resort subdivision, which is to the east of where it's going to be built, there are approximately 105 children, 18 and under, that live within that subdivision. 17 of those are on that first road in the subdivision. I know that, that's where I live. I am concerned and worried about the health and safety of our children. Every day on a daily average, there's 5 to 8 kids playing in my driveway. Apparently I have the favorite driveway of the neighborhood, or in my yard because they like our rocks. I don't know. So, you know, kids are important, and that's on the first road, directly in the subdivision. Excuse me. That's not to mention all the other kids throughout the neighborhood. 105, there's a lot of them out there. So it gets sunny, warm. They're gonna go out and play. That's what they wanna do. I'm worried also about the right in, right out. The, what do you call it? The
ingress, egress.
Yes, thank you. That will force the exiting traffic onto Washington Fields Road. That's a busy intersection. That's a busy area. People are going to want to go north. They're not going to want to wait to turn onto 2000 South. They're not going to want to go through the subdivision. That way, if they come out on Washington Fields Road at that right, they're going to come into our subdivision and U-turn, which is where all the kids play. And it will bring unnecessary traffic and excessive traffic into our subdivision in our area. My next concern is the hazard for our children trying to cross Washington Fields Road. It is 5 lanes of traffic, 40 miles an hour, and then they have to cross another 3 lanes to go across 2000 South to get to the gas station to buy candy and pop. This is a horrible intersection where I myself have not only witnessed many near accidents, but I have also narrowly missed being in many accidents. There are cars that constantly turn right off Washington Fields Road onto the 2000 South without looking. They don't stop. There are many cars that turn left onto 2000, from 2000 South onto Washington Fields Road. They don't stop for the subdivision people. They don't look to see if you're going straight. That's a concern. They do not yield to people. Let's not even mention the numerous vehicles that I see run yellow and red lights on a daily basis. Did you know that according to the Utah Department of Public Safety's Highway Safety Office website, from January 1st to January 2021 to January 1st, 2022, there were 846 pedestrian-involved crashes in the state of Utah, with 47 fatalities and 801 injuries. In Washington County, there were 58 pedestrian-involved crashes, with 3 fatalities and 59 involved injuries. 5 of those pedestrian-involved crashes were in Washington City. So far this year, from January 1st until February 7th, there have already been 7 pedestrian-involved crashes in Washington County, with 1 of those already in the city. 20% of all the fatal crashes within Washington County are pedestrian-involved. One of my final concerns for our children is the effect of the benzene within 500 feet. Currently, there's 27 children who live within that 500-foot radius. If we go to the 1,000-foot radius, there's 70. I am concerned already having a family history of leukemia, cancer, other health problems, what that will add to my children's health. I know there's going to be commercial business there. I just ask you to consider the safety and health of our children and our community. If this was your neighborhood, your children, your grandchildren, would you want a gas station next to your home? Please don't let us have one of our children become a statistic. Thank you.
Thank you, Nikki. Appreciate your well-prepared comments. I'm going to ask for just another quiet raise of hand to ask the question of how many share Nikki's concerns with the ingress, egress, and the children in that intersection. Thank you. The public hearing is still open. Shauna Joe, I see you coming.
Thank you, Mayor and City Council. My name is Shauna Jo Larkin, and I kind of wear 2 hats. Not only am I a resident of Desert Meadows and a representative of my neighborhoods, I'm also a real estate professional who fights daily advocacy for property rights. And I recognize that the owner of this land has property rights as well. And I sympathize with your position. I think we all do. How difficult it must be to balance the needs of the community, the individual property owner, and the neighbors. It's tough. And I understand from my study and experience that shorter trips mean less traffic issues. And so there is wisdom in a city putting some commercial near residential. My purpose today is to suggest that there's a better location for a gas station / car wash. That would be on the corner of 3650 East and Washington Fields Road. There's a 9-acre parcel that's currently for lease there. I spoke with the agent representing the owner of that property. They do not intend to lease the entire property. There's a section of it that they intend to bring to the city for approval for, guess what? A convenience store and car wash. It's a better location. It's not as close to residences. It doesn't have the same kind of a curve leading into it. I would just ask you to consider that maybe there's a better location for those high impact in a spot that's open with ownership already looking for that same kind of use, and put some of the lower impact, as Karen has mentioned, with an ideal location not too far away, pulling it away from immediate residential neighborhoods. The only other thing I'd suggest is when I speak with my professional agents who work in the commercial area, and I've just asked them, what would be ideal there? What do you have leasers and tenants and people looking to get into on the commercial use for this kind of a neighborhood? A lot of them were talking about retail and restaurant, and didn't feel like there would be difficulty getting tenants in for that type of a use, which I think would be much less impact. And I know it's not the same bottom dollar to the property owner. I get that. But this is where people live. This is right next door to where there's residences, and there's a better place for it in the city of Washington. Thank you.
Thank you, Shauna Jo. We appreciate your comments. Do I need to ask for a quiet raise of hand on that? Thank you.
Hi, my name's Becky Kerr, and I'm a resident of Desert Meadows, and I'm also the HOA president there. I'm representing those residents that feel the same way as I do, and then also the ones that don't have a voice, that haven't even moved in yet on 2 of the proposed sites, or 2 of the borderings that border the site. St. George, I believe, has a hold on building more car washes. I think we should follow, because we're more awesome than they are. We need to find ways to conserve water, like you've all spoken earlier today about conserving water. We don't need to add to how to use more of it. There's going to be so much congestion there. There already is, like they've spoken before. There'll be noise from the vacuums all hours of the day and night. There's going to be mud from the ATVs and the UTVs. And if you allow this project to move forward, you're going to be setting a precedence for others. A gas station and a car wash don't belong in a residential setting. There are already 4 in a 3-mile radius. Please consider what has been said, what I have said, what the others have said, and don't approve the gas station and car wash portion of their proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. We appreciate your comments. Markel.
Hi, my name's Markel Massey. I live on Meadow Lane, which is across Washington Fields Road from this property, and appreciate each of you and what you do. This commercial property goes back, I believe it was in December of 2018 that we attended the city council when the Nice and Fields became approved by the city council, and this parcel was approved as a PUD, and I don't believe that any of you were here other than Drew, and you were here, Craig.
Sorry, I was on planning commission.
Okay.
I think.
Okay, and you both
Yeah,
were.
so
Okay.
we worked on the project on planning commission level.
So you are familiar with it, but what we what we heard in that city council meeting when this was presented is that it being a PUD, and correct me if I'm wrong, it being a PUD and not a neighborhood commercial zoned property, is that there then is some input from the different entities, and I don't know if input from us is part of that, but the words that went around, this is to be a neighborhood commercial property. It's going to be something that's going to be blend in with the neighborhood, and those words kept being used, and I'm here to represent the concept that making your buildings look neighborhood friendly does not make it a neighborhood friendly commercial property. In my opinion, a gas station, as so many people have mentioned, right, I mean, just from here to that wall would be where the trucks are filling up to where children would be playing in their backyards in those townhomes right there. But a lot of the things that have been presented tonight, I concur with, and I add my voice, probably not because it doesn't affect me so much as I would speak out for those little children that are on that wall. It's just that landscape buffer is about 5 foot wide, and then the children are in their backyards right there. This really, in my opinion, is not something that's neighborhood friendly. If this parcel were bigger, and maybe there was some offices or strip mall or something that was not so commercial, then it would fit in. But this parcel just isn't big enough to fit in with the neighborhood. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Massey. I have noted your question about PUD commercial, and either I or someone else will address that once the public hearing is closed. Is there any others who have something else that they'd like to add to this discussion? Please come forward and state your name for the record. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Chris Tidwell. I'm a Washington Fields homeowner, Washington City business owner, past president of Washington Little League, current head coach for Crimson Cliffs High School mountain bike team. I've lived in Utah for 12 years. I've lived in Washington City for 12 years. To say I've put my roots down in the city is an understatement. I've moved my family here. I've moved my business here. I've hired employees, and I've witnessed the growth of this city in a short amount of time. 12 years ago, this place was a lot different. A friend of mine that moved here 10 years prior to me moving here mentioned to me, and it hit home, you're just buying time. You know, our city is growing. You can't stop that. We can't stop that. Fields are being mowed over. Home builders and developers are coming in. It's a facts of life. My personal opinion is I'd love to see the building permits quadruple and not see a single other home be built. That's my personal opinion. I know that's not practical, and I know that's not what is good and beneficial for a growing city. The proposed project, I'm in favor of it. I live 1,500 feet from the proposed location in Silver Falls subdivision. I value all the comments and I appreciate the community's concerns on some of the issues. But the bottom line is that we are growing. The convenience factor is huge for this project. Being able to leave my home to grab fuel, grab Gatorade, grab a snack, head up to the ball fields, get there on time, that's important to me. For what it's worth, it took me 15 minutes to get here, and I waited at the light 3 times at Washington Fields Road and Telegraph. It's crazy busy. So to go that direction to get fuel, I drive by First Stop all the time because every single pump is occupied. It's like, I'll come back the next time on my way back through from running errands. I've developed this community first mindset. So my personal opinions are not as important as what's good for the community. I feel that developing commercial in Washington Fields is a long time, it's long overdue. Is this project perfect for everybody? No, but I do believe it is going to benefit the community as a whole and make it more convenient for our moms and dads that are on the go and on the move to be able to get their fuel, get their snacks, get their car washed, hopefully have a place that we can walk to and get a good dinner or a sandwich on the weekends. You know, growing up, it was a rite of passage to ride your bicycle to the gas station to get candy and a drink. For a kid to do that in Washington Fields right now, where do they go? Where do they have the opportunity to ride their spin scooter or their bicycle to go get a cold drink and a candy bar? Lynn's, Smith's, that's far. It's dangerous, and it's an undeveloped road that is probably going to be developed at some point, but there's no sidewalks on one side. Part of the benefit to having this land developed is that the landowners will have to put in curb and gutter and sidewalk and some other things to actually make that intersection much safer than it is now. I'm not denying that that's a crazy intersection. It comes up on you quick. I always get mad when I have to hit that light, but it is what it is. That's there, that lot's there. Their owner does have property rights. I do appreciate one of the previous speakers mentioning that point, and that is the bottom line. You know, I wish that farmers wouldn't sell off their fields to build more homes, but they have the right to do that. They have the right to sell that land to the highest bidder, and most of these farm fields are being developed for homes. South of the river has changed in the last 12 years. Majority of Washington City population is probably going to be, if not already, is going to be south of the river here real quick. Has there been any commercial development south of the river in the last 10 years? Is anyone aware of that? So
We're noting your questions. Thank you.
I just have
Continue. Yeah, you're
I have
fine.
one more point. We have a local family willing to put their money into this project to keep this in the Washington City values and to keep this, you know, aesthetically pleasing. They have put a lot of effort into this project to present this in the best possible way for the council and for the community. My personal opinions don't really matter when it comes to developing a city. And I think you guys all are aware of that too. You know, you have some issues with certain things every day. But the greater good for the community is what I'm speaking to right now. And having a few restaurants, a fuel station, a place to wash your car, not only puts more tax dollars into the city, puts more revenue into the RAP tax budget, it's super simple to see how this will work. I can't deny any of the complaints or the issues that some of these residents have mentioned, but at the same time, I do feel that is a lot of personal viewpoints and not necessarily taken in the city as a whole. And that's all I have to say.
Chris, thank you for your comments. Appreciate, just while you're going there, I'm going to just make I do have one quick question for you. I guess a mayor privilege, but it's not in regards to this item, so I think, okay. First of all, let me just say thank you for your service to the Little League. And I know so many youth that are involved in your mountain biking group that it's been such a positive thing for them. One of them recently crashed. I haven't had a chance to ask how he's doing.
Do you know the name?
I have the name on my text, but it was on one of our trails. Was it a Pine View student, not a Crimson Cliff student?
So unfortunately, you know, riding mountain bikes on dirt trails, that does happen, and we do take precautions.
This one was on an asphalt trail, so you're off the hook there.
Yeah,
but
thank you.
he's been in my thoughts and prayers. I hope he's okay. Thank you for your comments and thank you for your service. The public hearing is still open. Yes, Karen, please come forward.
My name's Karen Blake, and I live across the street in Nichols Peak. And I just had a couple questions. I was trying to understand how the drive-through would work. And so you have the lane closest to the building, and it comes around, and then you have the outside lane. And so the outside lane is going to pull in front of the inside lane to go to the window on the side? Is that how they get their food?
So we're noting that question.
That was one question. And because if they have to drive around, you're going to have people coming out and people crossing over. It's going to get very confusing. And then another thing that was brought up in the Planning Commission that hasn't been addressed is their parking and the amount of traffic going through the development. People coming in and people going out, it just seems like a lot of merging right in the middle. The people coming from the food place would go to the middle and they'd either go left or right to get out, but yet the people that are coming in are going to the food place or they're going to the convenience store. It just seems that they're gonna all be crisscrossing in the middle of going out and coming in. That's a concern. And then also the, like if you park or whatever, if there's enough parking. And then another question or comment I wanted to make, we are right across the street and we have 2 exits out of our subdivision. We have the one there on the east side, and then the west would go parallel, well, it lines up with the subdivision across the street from us. Yeah, right there. And when we try to leave in the morning, between, like 7 and 9, it's like crazy. I mean, to try to get out and turn left, it's already crazy. My daughter was trying to leave today at 4 o'clock, and she said she sat there and had to wait for like 10 minutes to be able to get out of our subdivision. And that's already without any development across the road. When we add the added homes, townhomes, all those people are going to be trying to get out. And I can understand what that gentleman was just barely saying about how this is convenient and he'd love to go there. And the whole time I was thinking of it, everything he was saying was more traffic, more traffic, more traffic, more traffic. It's just like, oh, I can bring this in. We can gather here. I can stop here. And it's just more and more and more. So to an already busy intersection, a busy road that is already taxed, we're going to have, I don't know, 200 homes or whatever the amount is across the street in that subdivision. That's going to increase traffic alone, regardless of what we put in there. And so those are some big concerns. I know that on our side, I was concerned about people cutting through our subdivision, because you're going to you have to go out and turn right, and not everyone's going to want to go right south on Washington on the 300 or whatever it is now. But so they're going to they'll turn right and come a loop around, or they'll go through the subdivision, which the roads are normal size from what I understand. But if you add people coming out of the development and cutting through the subdivision to go up, go north, and then cut back on to get back on to the Washington Road, it just, that those people that are going to be building there, they haven't built yet, so they really have no voice. But that's going to be a thoroughfare for them, for people coming out of the development to try to, they're not going to want to come out and go right, or to come out and try to turn left and go back out to the road is going to be, so it's where it is now is to get and to go back into Washington to go north. It's going to be you're going to have to cross traffic right there by our entrance and try to cut across traffic and head back up, or you go right and you're going to have to come down and make a U-turn to go back into Washington. So those are some of my concerns. I know that there's going to have commercial. We all are aware of that. We're not happy about the way it came about, but that's water under the bridge and it's going to happen. We just ask that you please be mindful of what we're setting a precedent as. I am concerned about the corner across the street that is on my side of the road that has also been part as neighborhood commercial. And if you put a gas station or something big on this corner, I am seriously afraid of what's going to go on my side of the street. And that one, they will definitely come through my neighborhood because there's nowhere else to go to exit. And so we're setting a precedent in what you do on this corner. It just scares me what's going to be on the next corner. And I know I'm supposed to be facts and I'm not supposed to be emotional, so I apologize for that. But this is where we live. And it's so just the safety part is very important. I just think that there's so much going on. The traffic is a huge concern. And it is hard already for us to get out of our subdivision and to walk. And if you say you want to walk there, send our kids over, I am not going to send my grandkids across the street to the gas station to get a candy, because to cross at that intersection, even with the light, it is still crazy busy and people don't stop and they don't look. So I don't even feel safe to cross the street. It's close. I'll say, no, I'll get in the car. I'll take you somewhere, because I won't let them walk. So, thank you.
Thank you, Karen. We've noted your points that you've made and your questions about the drive-through windows and about the flow within the project. And we've noted the questions about the ingress egress onto 2000 and on and from your subdivision and onto Washington Fields Road. And your points are well taken. The public hearing is still open. You just state your name for the record, and I'm sorry I don't already know you.
No, and I don't know you. My name is Rich Macaluso.
Okay, the name is, for whoever's up there, wherever the recorder is.
Rich Macaluso.
Rich Macaluso.
Good Irish name.
Welcome, Rich.
First, I would like to respond just briefly to the positive statement towards the development of this. I appreciate the point of convenience, and the only thing that I have to say about that is I don't think we need convenience at the expense of our health. And I don't think the things that Marianne had presented, I don't know how anybody could think that there isn't a real health issue here. Now, that being said, I would like to discuss the things I came up for. One is regarding the movement of cars through here. I know a couple of people have mentioned it, but it just seems like, and I was at the Planning Commission meeting, and there was a big long discussion on going through the drive-through windows and the stacking and all kinds of things like that. And it just seems that they're trying to squeeze too much into this parcel and bending over backwards to try and make something work that's not workable. And this pork chop in there and the hash zone and everything like that. People are going to be people. They're going to go cut each other off, and they're not going to, they don't keep lanes open when you're on the road and you need to make a left turn onto another street. Drivers don't keep a lane open. So I don't see how all this is going to work. The other item is access to the pumps. There's no room coming into the gas pumps off of Washington Fields Road. You fill up the pumps and you get 3 more cars in there, and you're going to have another little mini Costco on 3050 East. So that just doesn't seem workable to me. And the other item is, you have a gas station there, you got to get gas to it. You're going to have gas tankers coming down an area of the city where they normally don't come right now, going through neighborhoods with no other commercial areas or anything. So I just think that's an unnecessary hazard that would be caused by putting this gas station in. And then finally, I live dangerously, and I Googled. And because
haven't we all?
Because we had a neighborhood meeting, and one of the people there had mentioned something about a nuisance law, that state law. So I didn't write down the numbers and the dashes and the letters and everything else. It was pretty easy to find, and I'd just like to read from that. It says, a nuisance is anything that is injurious to the health, decency, offensive to the senses, or an obstruction to the free use of property so as to interfere with the comfortable enjoyment of life or property. It seems to me that this fits that definition of that law. Now, I'm not a lawyer. How that law applies here, I don't know. Seems to me it does. So, and also it seems to me, I know a popular refrain in these debates is that the property owner, the commercial property owner, has rights to develop the property, make money. Sure, yes, he does. But so as here, a nuisance, people have right to enjoy their property, their freedoms, and it's seems to me it's equal. A commercial property owner doesn't have more rights, doesn't have more reason to do what he wants, even with the council overseeing it and, regulating it. I think all the people that are not yet in heritage area and all the people in the communities around, we have properties that we should be able to enjoy without worry of what's going to happen with our kids and grandkids and what's going to happen to our health and that type of thing. And that's it.
Thank you, Rich. Appreciate your comments.
Welcome.
Are there any comments from things that we haven't heard? We've heard about the health and safety. We've heard about some of the traffic issues onto Washington Fields Road, the intersection 2000 South. We've heard some talk about the drive-through and the layout on the site. Yes, welcome.
Hi, I'm Deanna Ackerman. I just live in Nichols Peak on Stanley Circle. Aside from everything that's been brought up, because I don't want to keep repeating it, I have really, a lot of concerns. I think it's a lot to put into that area, and I don't think it's appropriate. But in the Planning Commission, I did bring up, and I don't know if you guys get all those notes or whatever, but right now our subdivision in Nichols Peak currently doesn't have a bus system for the elementary school. We are in the Riverside is where those kids go. And there's no sidewalk on our side of the road. So that when I was, looking into, so either I have to take my kid or have him walk almost 2 miles to school every day, and then the heat, it's a lot. First of all, they'd have to cross the busy road or go up to that intersection. There's no sidewalk, and to be honest, right now, I don't even let my 12-year-old ride his bike or walk along that road on the outside of the block wall that's there, because traffic is a nightmare. And one of my kids was walking further down where there's the ditch, and and it was almost ran off the road by just cars, and so it's already a concern. But for them to make it to a bus stop, they'd have to cross that intersection and go all the way to the bus stop that's up by the kind of close to the soccer park. Mm-hmm. With all this traffic that's going to be coming in and all those homes that are going to be developed and the ins and outs and people turning around and how crazy it is already, I can't see that getting any better. And yes, it was great, rite of passage to ride your bike to the convenience store as a child, but those convenience stores were put in way before residential in most of the areas here. And currently, I would never let my child, even my teenager, ride his bike across the street. And maybe I'm just overprotective, but that is a dangerous area already. So I just don't see it getting any better. But that's all I wanted to bring up.
You're very well spoken, Deanna. We appreciate your comments. I noted that you had concerns with the bus system and the lack of sidewalk on the south side of 2000 South, among other things.
Yeah,
thank you. Are there any additional items or points to bring forward for this council to consider before we close the public hearing? Please.
Hi, my name is Ashley Farmer, and I live in Desert Meadows, which is just east of this planned, whatever it is.
It's a planned unit development commercial. Okay. It's a mouthful.
Thank you all for your service and for the time that you put into this. I just wanted to, I've been living in this neighborhood since 2008, and I've watched a lot of growth. When we first moved in a little bit further down on this road, before it was even as busy as it was, there was a little kid that was hit and killed right before the bridge.
Yeah, I remember that.
And there is still a little shrine right there on the side of the street. When you go into Desert Meadows, I am the third house on the right, and I have 3 kids. And they're always outside playing, and I am constantly out there wanting to throw a shoe at somebody coming down that road going too fast. We have definitely chased down people and asked them to go slow, but I'm just saying, coming out of my neighborhood, that is a blind corner, completely blind, and they put a light there but people do not stop at that light, and people are constantly running the red light. It is a very dangerous corner. I went to a planning meeting a long time ago and they moved it. It was before they did have a plan to have it on this corner, but they had actually moved it down off of that corner, because when we were at that meeting, we brought it up that corner is a terrible corner to put more traffic on. We're already having a hard time with it. There's already been a little kid killed down the street. Like, why do we have to keep fighting? This is the thing, we keep doing it. It's been years, and this is brought up constantly. So what I would like to see done is to have this tabled. Why do we have to keep fighting this fight? That's what I'm at. I understand that this person that has bought this property wants to make money, but let's pretend like he lives in my home. Would he want this property there on such a busy road? Does he understand how much traffic comes in and out? That is such a busy intersection, and to put a gas station on it, it would be an insane intersection. And that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Ashley. We've made notes of your comments. Is there any further comment that would like to be made on this? If this item is tabled, there would not be another public hearing. So this is kind of the last chance to make any additional points. I want to make sure that that's clear before I close the public hearing. Okay, at this point, I will officially close the public hearing on item 9B. And I recognize the council have taken note of the comments, of the questions. And at this point, we will try to go through those. It'll be in a couple of different ways so that you understand how this will happen. Is first, we'll invite the applicant to come forward, and applicants will typically also be making notes of the concerns and the questions that have been brought up during the public hearing. So we'll give the applicant an opportunity to share any information that they would like to share about the project, and then to address any of the concerns or questions. Once the applicants had an opportunity to do that, and the applicant's representative, if they so choose, then we will let the applicant finish speaking, and then we will continue with any questions for our staff and discussion amongst the council before calling for a vote. So at this time, we'll invite the applicant to come forward and say what they would like to say. And you've done this 100 times as the engineers, I'm sure, so you know to state your name for the record. I just don't want to get in trouble with the recorder.
I'm just going to hit the highlights of it. Mayor, council, thank you for your time.
And you just move that mic up just a little bit.
Is that better?
That's great. Thank you, Bronson.
All right. I didn't write all my notes down. A lot of comments. Just if it's all right, just slowly go through some of the concerns, and I'll just try to hit the highlights.
Absolutely.
From our standpoint. So and Drew, if you could help me out on the permitting for the beer, that was the first thing that came up. So from what utah.gov has got published, it is 600 feet, but it's measured by ordinary pedestrian travel, meaning the ordinary route that they would take, and 200 feet measured in a straight line from the front of the C-store. So with that being said, it is correct, but I just wanted to add that the ordinary pedestrian travel is what they consider for their licensing through the state.
And council, as the applicant is speaking, please feel free to ask clarifying questions as you need to.
I would ask our attorney can he just respond to that?
Yeah, I'll step in here.
The citizen did cite from a code of Washington City Code, and so it's one that we're aware of. My comment would take a step back a little bit, which is tonight's hearing and the application before the council is a land use application. And while the city and the state both regulate alcohol licenses, we do not ask the council to make administrative decisions on licenses at the land use phase. And so even though we know that convenience stores usually sell alcohol, even if approved as presented, the applicant would not have the right to sell alcohol. They would still have to come before the state and the city and comply with alcohol license application requirements. And so while I understand why the comment is combining those two tonight, the process does not combine those two. Tonight would be a land use decision, and the license decision would be pending any application by the future applicant. Tonight, we're not approving or considering any alcohol approvals tonight as it relates to this applicant.
Thank you, Thad.
Thank you, Thad. I want to hit on the water use. Obviously, I was born and raised here. We live in a desert. We're very aware of the water crunch. The landscaping has been taken into consideration. There's no lawn areas. All the plants, shrubs, and trees are low use shrubs. Along with a car wash, someone said that they Googled, and you can Google and pull up 100 different studies for car washes, or you can go to the state. But some of the EPA stuff that they've talked about with a homeowner washing their car at home, there's a couple different concerns. One is EPA says 160 gallons per wash. If you pull the 20 different studies from Florida, which I have in front of me, and just across the West or across the United States, it's between 100 and 160. With a self-serve, meaning you're washing your own car with the wand, it's about a 60% reduction going to a car wash versus washing at your home across the board. They all say that's a reduction of 60%. And I'm just going to hit all the different types of car washes, just so we're aware. I know there's other ones coming in. So friction bay automatic systems, which is just the old standard drive-through that has brushes, roughly is a 35-gallon use of water. In-bay automatic, that's what we consider touchless, no brushes, no friction, is about a 70-gallon per vehicle use. The tunnel washes that we're all getting very familiar with over the last couple of years around the county, with all the multitude high pressure gizmos they have and all the different sections that they have, is about 120 gallons of water per minute.
Can you say that again?
Yeah. So the tunnel wash.
So the tunnel wash, you're saying is 35 gallons per wash. The
120 gallons. So there's two different types. You have a tunnel, right, which is, let's say, I don't want to.
I understand. I know which one
Okay.
you're talking about
Yeah.
there, right? And I think the council does, and we don't want to get into names on different
thank you.
uses, but I just want to be clear, the tunnel washes are 120, the elongated washes. You're saying the touchless, which is what you're presenting, right?
Either a touchless or a friction, yes.
And then, but the standard, the one I'm unclear on is just the standard car wash. Is that the pull up and spray down with the spray gun?
So it's hard, they don't really give you a number per gallon, right? So, but if you took the 100-gallon at home and they say 60% reduction, so 40-gallon use on a self-serve. But
So
the numbers are
approximately
all, it's
40 gallons per use on those.
Correct. And that's, go ahead.
And what you're presenting is, are these all pull-through washes, or one of them?
So we have 3 self-serves with one friction. So can you go to, so the one with the door would be an auto. So the reason we show a door is during the winter, you do have to be able to heat from keeping your, so your pipes don't freeze up.
Bronson, are those water numbers without recirculation pumps? That's just assuming.
That's just water.
So
Yeah,
recirculation pumps would decrease. that
Correct.
number.
So you've got recycle water now that you can take, you can reuse the water, and that we talked about it at Planning Commission. There's multiple ways. One is collecting the water from your soft water. In the old days, it just dumps down the drain. Now we collect all that, put it into a tank, mix with culinary, and it just cycles. So it's getting a 50-50 mixture. The other thing is just recycling the water. There's recyclers. Basically what it does is it skims off the top, comes through a recycler, into another holding tank, mixing in the water. And so that's another
You're
way.
proposing a recycler on this project.
We would if we had to hit the 80-90%. I think we can hit the 50%, reuse without a recycler on this site because of the size of it. It's not a oversized car wash. And that's the hard thing is, talking with Public Works, Mike and John, there's nothing in the standard. They came to me and said, hey, what can you do? And I said, well, I think 50% is obtainable for our site personally.
Are you moving off of that issue, Bronson?
What's that?
Are you moving away from that issue?
Yes.
Council, just before you leave that issue in thought, the public mentioned some moratoriums. Just to clarify, in Washington City, there is no moratorium on car washes currently. And generally, when an application is made for a land use change, the applicable law would be the law in effect at the date of application. Mm-hmm. So were this an application for straight zoning, the law applied regarding car washes in the city would be the law in effect at the date of application. However, because this is a PUD, the city does have the opportunity to ask for certain things, has a little more leeway than straight zoning. It's probably well known that this council's considering a landscape and water use ordinance that does have some car wash regulations. I just want to tell you that even though you haven't adopted that yet, you could ask this applicant if as part of the PUD, they would agree to comply with your ordinance if you do adopt one. I recognize you haven't yet, but I just wanted to make that point. There is no moratorium. Law as it exists allows them to apply for this use. You are considering an ordinance, and you can ask this applicant if they'd be willing to comply with that as part of their PUD.
Are you familiar with what's in that ordinance?
Not 100%.
Well, and in fairness, I think the section applicable to car washes, it's kind of a moving target still. There's been some talk about.
I've read about the Conservancy districts, 25 gallon, I believe, of 15 or 25 fresh water per car. I think that's pretty obtainable for our site.
The other municipalities are looking at being a little tighter than that. This council may choose to go a little tighter than that as well. Like I could see it being close to 20, as low as 15. Are any of those attainable?
We would have to get our engineer involved.
And I don't know what the final number will be.
Yeah, without the recycler, I think it's going to be close to that 2025, just talking to before I came here. The 15 would probably automatically throw us into installing the recycler. Yeah. And just to let you guys know, on self-serves, there is a disadvantage because we do use, the use, there's a lot of sediments that come through these type of car washes versus a tunnel car wash that we're getting used to.
They keep getting mad at me. Drive my truck through it.
So the recyclers are a little tougher.
Never seen your truck dirty.
The recyclers are a little tougher, to be honest with you. There's a lot more maintenance talking to our car wash engineer. With that being said, though, I do want to highlight the sediment from the cars, the vehicles, the side-by-sides, whatever comes through here, muddy. The city has to go in and inspect storm drain, and Mike or somebody else can talk a lot deeper into it, but you guys, this MS4 permitting, this definitely helps keep sediment out of the storm drain system because we are containing it on site.
Can you talk a little bit to how you clean that sediment out of your system, or how you would if
Yeah,
approved?
so there's a couple different ways. Right now, we work with Dino Wash. I'll be transparent, open. I don't think they'll care if I use their name, but we both use the same pumping truck business. We pump our current car wash. We pump about once every 3 to 4 months, depending on season and the sediment, obviously. And so, yeah, we pump it out. You can get a Mini X piece of equipment, come in and just physically dig it out, put it in a dump truck and haul it off. There's some concerns with that just because we personally don't have a site to dump it. And so it is hazard material, so they have to have a designated site for it. So we would continue to use the pumping system.
Any further questions on water, recycling, sediment?
Gas stations, it's come up, the benzene, and you can do a lot of different research. One is the state, we would have to follow all state regulations, get all the proper licensing and meet all the regulatory that they would put on us. Typically, you do have vents off the pumps or off the tanks, in case of an emergency. And if it's all right, can I read you some of the installation? It's a little bit long, but I just wanted, just so you guys understand what the state requires, because the state inspects the installation. It wouldn't actually be the city; it'd be the state that would. I assume, right? I mean, I think that's how it works. It's how it's worked on all of our other sites. So here's for installation. For the tanks, state permits are required to install all underground gas equipment installation. It's done by state licensed individuals. Tanks are pressure tested after delivery and before installed in the ground. Tank installation is inspected by state inspectors. All tanks are required to be double wall tanks. Spill buckets are installed at fill points on the tanks. Tanks are required to have pressurized vent caps installed. Tanks will not vent to atmosphere. Tank will have vapor recovery to vent tanks into delivery truck during deliveries. Tank will have an overfill prevention device installed. Tanks will have a tank monitor installed to continuously monitor the tanks. A precision tank test is required after installation and before being put into service. Lines are installed under the same guidelines as the tanks. All lines are required to be double walled, lined, and all fittings are required to be monitored, containments under dispenser and on top of tanks. All lines will have a continuous line link detector installed, and a precision line test is required before lines are put into operation. That's just to get the installation of the tanks. After installation, and some of these questions, the reason I wanted to read is because some of these concerns came up at the Planning Commission, and I just wanted to clarify. After installation requirements, state inspectors will inspect the site every year to ensure they are in compliance. Tank monitors will do continuous testing, continuous line leak detectors. Monthly site inspections are required. Yearly. Tank monitor functional test, line leak detector functional test, precision line test. All containment sumps and double wall areas inspected. Every 3 years. Tank overfill device functional test, tank spill bucket leak test, all piping sump containment leak tested, and all piping sump containment sensors tested. So as you can see, there's a lot of regulation, a lot of inspection going on, not only in the install but after the install.
Can I look at that? Can I see that?
Yeah, and this is just, it's found at it's off utah.gov, and the website's on the bottom. So, and there are some of my handwritten notes on the bottom of that.
Back to you.
Okay, thank you. On the, and you know what, actually, Stan, will you talk to He has a little more experience in this, like 50 years of delivery of fuel and different things. So I just wanted to highlight the benzene and the recirc of the stuff.
Hi, my name is Stan Snow. I've been in the business with gasoline since 1968. Bought and sold it, hauled it, built service stations. We have 7 or 8 of our own. The one thing that the people are here are talking about the benzene. They don't understand. Once this system is in and you have your tanks in the ground, when that transport pulls in, he hooks up to drop it tight. He has to have certified tight fittings. He hooks up tight, then he goes to the vent and he hooks up tight to that. When he unloads, liquid in, air out back into the tank. And then it reverses itself when it gets to up to the refinery where we load it. It's product in, air out. So that's where the benzene goes. It doesn't come out of the vent tube. The vent tube is strictly an emergency, just in case something malfunctions. And I can tell you that in 50 years of doing this, I've seen that happen twice. And we've sold and hauled hundreds and millions of gallons to service stations. I mean, and I'm not exaggerating that, it was a lot. So that's how that works. The benzene problem that anybody's got, if you're gonna get any benzene, you're gonna get it where you're fueling the car. So if these people anybody that has a concern about it is gonna get the benzene back on your hand when you're fueling that car. The chances of that coming out of the air is slim to none, because that's not how it works. Now, 15 years ago, that wasn't how it worked. It all went up the stack. And then Salt Lake County, Utah County, they started to do what California did, and they started to make you capture the vapors, yada, yada. Well, it finally, in the last 5 or 6 years, finally made it to Washington County. But even before it was law in Washington County, anybody that built a new station conformed to the law, because they don't want the vapors floating either. I mean, gas vapors are gas vapors, and they are dangerous if they ignite. But that's not how it works. It goes liquid in, vapor back into the truck. Very simple. The trailers are certified once a year. They have to go in, and it goes through an extensive test on the trailer to make sure that it would hold the vapors. I mean, this is not the way it was in 1968 when I had a station and you just come in, dumped it in the ground, didn't care if it ran on down the street or it didn't. It's very well regulated. So the transport of this and the vapors coming out of that truck is go to the station, watch them dump it. It's a mute issue, because it's not there. These people that everybody here drove here, so they're gonna go gas the car. Whether they gas it over the shortstop or over the Maverick or wherever they go, that's when they're gonna get it. Nobody's gonna stop that.
Thank you, Stan. We appreciate your experience and your insight on that. Thank you.
Mayor, this might be a good time for me to chime in with the city's legal position.
Please.
I'm going to read from 2 Utah laws. The first is in the Utah Municipal Code, Title 10, Chapter 9A, Section 102, subsection 3. Again, this is in the state law that we have to follow as a municipality because we are a subdivision, political subdivision of the state. It says, subsection 3 reads, any ordinance, resolution, or rule enacted by a municipality pursuant to its authority under this chapter shall comply with the state's exclusive jurisdiction to regulate oil and gas activity as described in section 40-6-2.5. I'll read from that section in a moment. Subsection B of section 3, a municipality may enact an ordinance, resolution, or rule that regulates surface activity incident to an oil and gas activity if the municipality demonstrates that the regulation, 1, is necessary for the purposes of this chapter, 2, does not effectively or unduly limit, ban, or prohibit an oil and gas activity, and 3, does not interfere with the state's exclusive jurisdiction to regulate oil and gas activity, as defined in subsection chapter 40. So I'll now go to chapter 40. This is Utah Code Chapter 40 on mines and mining, or Title 40, Chapter 6, Board and Division of Oil and Gas Mining. This is 40-6-2.5. Subsection 1, oil and gas activity means activity associated with the exploration, development, production, processing, and transportation of oil and gas, including, and then it provides a list of 7 examples. Subsection B, oil and gas activity does not include any activity or authority directly authorized or granted to a political subdivision by the state. As I previously read, the state did give the city the chance to regulate activity incidental to a surface activity of oil and gas if we find those 3 conditions. Then it continues, regulation of oil and gas activity is of statewide concern, and the state regulation of oil and gas activity occupies the whole field of potential regulation. And then the third provision is a repeat of what I read from the municipal code. It reads, the legislative body of a political subdivision may enact, amend, or enforce a local ordinance, resolution, or rule consistent with its general land use authority that A, regulates only surface activity that is incident to an oil and gas activity, B, does not effectively or unduly limit, ban, or prohibit an oil and gas activity, and C, is not otherwise preempted by state or federal law. And so those are the relevant laws that Washington City abides. For this reason, we don't have an ordinance regulating petroleum. We don't have employees or any departments that regulate or track any of these things. As you've heard, the state is who regulates our existing fueling stations, from the pumps to the fumes. They regulate the transportation of fuel from the facilities that produce it to those stations. Washington City does not have any current staffing laws or departments that regulate this area of commerce.
Thank you, Thad. Would the applicant or the applicant representative like to address any additional questions or concerns that were brought up during the public hearing?
And just reverting back to that, one more comment on that. When the trucker does hook up to the cycle, if he's not hooked up or doesn't use that, it's a $10,000 fine to the truck driver. So it's a serious. I mean, they've taken it pretty serious, the state of Utah. With that being said, I think I'll turn it over to our engineer and architect.
Can I ask one question?
Please, council member.
Bronson?
Yes.
Do you, one of the concerns that one of the residents asked about was how many tanker deliveries do you anticipate per week?
So we anticipate 1 delivery per week.
Okay.
Yeah. Any other questions?
So Bronson, one of the, I know you worked, I appreciate you working with the planning commission, addressing as many items as you can. I'm going to bring up the sign because I brought up earlier.
Yeah.
Just, you better check the site triangle, and I'm sure your engineer will look into that and make sure it meets all the codes and requirements. I appreciate you adding that right turn lane off of 2000 South. The question I had was the question that was asked was the flow in the parking lot. Now, I look at the flow and see the traffic pattern you put on, and I don't see a concern on the traffic pattern, but maybe you can address if you see, I mean, looking at the uses, there is lots of uses. So maybe maybe your engineer can explain the traffic pattern and the use and how it got laid out. And one item that I think I've seen a concept where the parking fuel pumps were rotated. I don't know if that helps the traffic pattern, but I'd like to see some discussion on that.
Okay. I'll let Phil come up. Thanks.
Phil Giles with Mainline Engineering. Yeah, we did look at the circulation inside of the commercial development here, and we've done a trip generation memo to kind of get an idea of how much traffic we're generating throughout the day and at the peak hours, and we will complete a traffic impact study if this proceeds, and get into more detail on the roads with that. But yeah, looking at it, we should be able to have good circulation through here. There didn't have anything pop out that it was a real concern for us. Talking a little bit about the queuing on the drive-throughs. The same configuration, there's two spots here in Washington County. There's the one at Desert Hills High School, the Little Caesars, and then over at Santa Clara in the Lens, there's the Mobetta Swig that has this exact same configuration there. And we could look at the stacking for the second bay coming around. Right now it shows one car, and, you know, maybe just depending on where that window goes, we could get another car or two stacking up there, so it's not just one car waiting for the window. But yeah, we can definitely look at improving that conflict point just a little bit.
So, and that kind of, just so for the record, so you can explain it, you had a question, Councilman, on the striping, and is that still a concern? I'm asking on the striping of the do not block zone. I've seen those other places, and it all depends on the use. I mean, if you put in a super, I mean, you hate to say it, a super productive place, it can be a nightmare if they don't have enough stacking. So that's, I mean, that's one of the things that's hard to say because you don't have a tenant yet. But I think I'm going to express my opinion that if you put in something that has more stacking, I see that it can go up farther into the parking lot and not bleed onto our street, which I like. But I don't know. You had some concerns with it, so.
So I don't personally have a concern with it, but I was at the Planning Commission meeting, and I know that was a hot topic at that. So I was just more curious as I looked at the site plan, you know, what the traffic patterns were. And of course, we don't see the painted lines that'll be on there and things like that. Sure. But, you know, and I've been to a lot of drive-throughs, and, you know, so I can maybe kind of imagine what would go on. But so anyway, but I appreciate you addressing it. So thank you.
Yeah. Bronson Bundy again. And I just want Craig mentioning that on like a high use. I just want to keep in mind that they are 1,800 square feet. They're going to be partitioned off. So they are smaller units. So I just keep that aware.
So that makes me, we asked the question about, it says drive-through on every single one.
Yeah, and go ahead. Sorry.
Copy and paste there?
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean,
So
I've been
yeah,
there,
the west one will not have a drive-through on it. It'll be
the
more
west
of a,
one does not?
Correct. It'll be more of a sit-down, yeah.
Could you give us an idea, no names, of course, of businesses, but what types of businesses are you kind of envisioning for that? I mean, a hamburger place, a drink place, you know, what are you envisioning?
We envision more along the lines of a sub shop, a pizza joint, and an ice cream shop is what we would like to see in there. We've talked to a few different people that have come to us, but that's what we would like to see.
So obviously, Council, what you're considering tonight is twofold, right? The design and the use. And while I don't have a vote, I would just put to the record that I personally, from experience on the Planning Commission Council, I do have some concern with the double drive-through. I feel like with that crossing from the one coming from the outside lane to hit that inside eastern side drive-through and traffic exiting from the middle drive-through, I do have some concerns with that. And I guess my question to you as this council is considering design and use, would you be open to one drive-through rather than two?
We would definitely take that into consideration. I haven't thought about it. You know, I think it definitely can work. I think the sub shop and a pizza joint, if you look across the board now, all those guys want drive-throughs, and they're pretty quick. And so I wouldn't want to limit it, but I would definitely, if that was a concern, we would definitely discuss it with you.
So I appreciate that, and that was one of my first thoughts too. And if I hadn't seen it done in other parts of our community, I would be more concerned.
Yeah.
And things have changed with the way we service since COVID happened. People just they don't want to go in. I mean, there's a restaurant over by Smith's that the lines backed up through the parking lot every single night. And I think they wish they had a double for just themselves alone.
Right.
So I'm just thinking this through. We just worked on a project just recently and it's kind of a double stacked as well. And that one of course had its own lanes, right? No crossing. So I can see your concerns. If I hadn't seen it and seen how it worked, I'm not as concerned about that, me personally. But like I said, I'm 1 vote of 5. That's one thing that I'm not too concerned about with. I'm more concerned that we had to add the right turn lane and not give enough landscaping, but I think we can get some plants in there. There's 5 feet, I'm assuming.
Yeah. It's like a McDonald's. Our McDonald's here locally in Washington. It's a 2-to-1. I mean, you kind of, it's not the dual, but it's 2
Sure.
into 1. I mean, we're at snail pace.
I think what I'd like to do, if you're okay, as you, the applicant, and you as the engineer or the representative, I think to be fair to the public comment, I'm just going to go through some of the questions that were asked, and if it's appropriate for you to ask or staff to ask council.
Just one more legal comment. Council, you won't be surprised that the state legislature has also passed a law regarding regulation of drive-through facilities, and so I just wanted to share that with you before you finalize your consideration.
What does the state let us? A little bit of budget, maybe? I don't know.
Your budget is heavily regulated by the state too, so.
That's why I said a little bit of budget. I understand the regulation on the budget, council.
This is Utah Code, Title 10, which is the Utah Municipal Code, Chapter 8, Part 1. I'm reading in subsection 2. It says, a municipality, I may need to learn how to pronounce municipality before I'm done with this career. A municipality may not withhold a business license, deny a land use application, or otherwise require a business that has a drive-through service as a component of its business operations to A, allow a person other than a person in a motorized vehicle to use the drive-through, or B, and then it discusses for a couple lines, offering different time of business hours for the drive-through versus the lobby.
Or is this a land use ordinance?
This is a land use ordinance. Your discussion tonight hasn't reached these areas, but if you're trying to talk about, you can use it for off-highway vehicles but not motorized vehicles or golf carts, you would run into one of these. The other one is if you're saying you can use it during certain times of business but not at others, you would run into this. But I think so far you're not there.
Thank you, council. Okay, I'm going to shotgun some of these questions because the way that we handled the public hearing, I think everyone deserves to have questions answered. And council, please, if you wrote down questions that I didn't get, I had asked you to ask those questions as well. And I'll leave that to primarily our community development director and the applicant to answer these questions. One of the questions that was brought up by Karen Brown is in regards to low impact versus high impact. She recommended things like a bakery, an ice cream shop, beauty salon, indoor pickleball, which I'm all for, and I'm kidding, I play outdoor pickleball when I play, and a cafe. Do one of you want to address that, low impact versus high impact? And her concerns with that she mentioned were 6 gas stations, according to her, within a 3-mile proximity and none in a residential neighborhood.
Perfect. Derek Wiggins with Reflect Architecture.
Hi, Derek.
Acting architect. Yeah, thank you. So to answer that, obviously our intent would be to have low impact just based on the square footage of this facility. We couldn't have a real high impact operation within this building. As Bronson has stated already, we'd love to see an ice cream shop, which I know was mentioned, pet grooming cafe. Any of those would be welcomed here. Even a pharmacy would be amazing, I think. To address the concern within the 3-mile radius, I did a quick Google search since that's popular nowadays, I hear. And Washington City is 35 square miles, which if you do some quick math is a 6 by 6 square roughly. So if you put a dot right in the middle, it is literally a 3-mile radius and you hit almost 100% of Washington City. So I'm not surprised by that at all. The math would check out that, yeah, there would be gas stations within that radius, absolutely. And so we find that the use is well within the land use. And I guess I would ask that if what kind of jurisdiction or what's within the council's rights to jurisdict a gas station within a PUD.
I'm not sure I understand your question.
Can they jurisdict, I guess, a gas station within a PUD, or has it's an approved use for commercial?
So a PUD commercial zone allows the city council to exercise broad legislative authority as to what uses would be within the best interests of the citizens and the public. And that would include the gas station or any of the other commercial approved lists. And so I guess that's a general response. There is no other city ordinance that talks about we'll only have so many gas stations per square mile. We do have ordinances that are similar about alcohol establishments and certain types of alcohol licenses, and also adult-themed businesses. Our code does allow those, but there's definitely a number and location regulation on those, but not as to gas stations.
Okay. And Mayor Staley.
Yes, I'll add to that, because I think that is a question that Marco Massey asked. And so a PUD commercial, as I understand, and I will not be using legal terms, right? I'll be using layman terms. But I see a PUD commercial as an opportunity for the applicant, the city, and the governing body, with input from the citizens, to determine the highest and best use of the property. Now, certainly in a PUD commercial, in straight zoning, there are typical entitled uses that are C1, C2, C3 zoning, and certainly we're not doing heavy manufacturing here, right? But the applicant is also not bringing forward something that's more administrative and professional type, like an office building. So there is a commercial, but I think when you talk about a PUD commercial, really taking it down to a level that I can wrap my head around, I think the council needs to determine what is the applicant bringing forward, and does that make sense for the community. It's as Mr. Elliman will say, oftentimes it's custom zoning, and as I understand, this property was bought with PUD commercial. So certainly there's the give and take that's happening tonight, the conversation that's happening tonight, and that's part of the process in a PUDC. I'll continue with some questions unless others want to bring up questions that they wrote down. One question that Shauna Jo Larkin asked about.
Do you care if I stop you?
Please, go ahead, jump in, yes.
I don't want to move on.
I'm asking for that.
Okay.
Go ahead, yes.
I'm just hopeful that Thad will kind of go into more detail about that, because I'm just kind of wondering how we balance the property rights. Like we as a, excuse me, as a city council cannot say, like, you have to do that, because it's a PUD, you have to do these certain things, where it is zoned, the commercial too, it's zoned for a gas station that they can do that.
So the way this ends up at the city council is an applicant comes to our planning and development departments. They say, this is my idea. I won't say frequently, but at that step, sometimes applicants are told, our code doesn't allow that use. And so they'll get advice and help at that level. If it makes it to the planning commission and city council, it's because it's an allowed use within our code and with our zoning designations. Now in a PUD, so city councils exercise, they wear two hats of authority at different times. There's administrative authority. That would be something like a license or a conditional use permit. You don't have very broad authority on administrative hat days or administrative hat agenda items. At that point, your job is to ask, does this comply with the requirements in our regulations? And if it does comply, state law says you're obligated to approve the application. This is not an administrative authority hat day. This is a legislative hat issue. And on legislative issues, the city council has broad authority to consider the health, safety, welfare of the citizens, the community, and the public at large about that application. And so if it was a straight zoned commercial, you would be wearing an administrative hat saying, does this application for commercial comply with the codes? And one of those would be, does the uses proposed conform with the approved uses list in the zoning designation? You don't have to be that technical here because it's a PUD commercial zone. You get to wear your legislative hat and you get to think more broadly, and you get to have a more push and pull conversation with the applicant instead of is this an approved use or not? And so I don't want to tell you how to exercise your belief as an elected official and the legislative authority that brings on this issue, but I want you to know you're wearing the hat that gives you a broader discretion, a wider field of concern about the public, the citizens, and that area which is distinctly your domain by virtue of election and appointment.
Thank you.
Well said. I'm happy to go through questions. I'm happy for you to go through questions. I do not want to dominate your conversation here by any means.
Well, I have lots of comments, but I'd like to get through the questions and then we can have a discussion between us council. If there's any, maybe we should bring up the traffic.
That's what I'm looking at now too. Yes, if you'd like to.
I asked the question on the traffic, and talking with the engineer, it sounds like they have their traffic study. It seems to be adequate. We have main arterial roads right next to it. It was brought up about the bus system. I wish we could control where the buses pull from. That's the school district. I brought this up before on this particular parcel. Where I personally live, I cross Washington Fields, and I cross 3650 for my kids, and I'm right at 1.5 miles, so they have to walk. And they have no light and no sidewalk. And we're working and we're getting lights on those. So I'm super excited that we're getting lights, but it's taken 3 or 4 years now and to warrant it. And so I just want to know, I understand how you feel because I have to send my kids as well. And they ride their bikes across those busy roads to go to school, and it's scary. But I also look back at the traffic and say, okay, this has a light. It is on a weird corner. I'm not deferring that, but it has a light which is supposed to help control traffic, but we can't help people being not safe. We do the best we can. Our police force does what they can, but this would help improve I look at it as this helps improve the traffic, in my opinion, along this road, because it gets the sidewalk along that north side. Now, it was asked about the south side. I don't know the history of that subdivision. I don't know if it was just there a long time ago and that's why they don't have sidewalk along that road. I don't know. We'd have to ask probably Public Works, and I did see Mike Shaw earlier. I don't know if he's still there.
Well, I wonder if we can have that, if this does get approved, for the safety, for people to be able to walk, to have the city put a sidewalk on the other side.
See, and I would look that as a city thing, not a part of this application.
And I said the city.
Yeah, I know. I agree. I was just
sure
backing
you
you
got
up.
that.
I was just agreeing with you. So I just wanted to make clear that that's how I look at it. We do have sidewalk. Can you pull to the right, Drew? There is sidewalk from the neighborhood to the light on the south side right now, a little bit, but I can see where it's missing when you go to the intersection.
Drew, do we own that sliver of sidewalk in question, or potential sidewalk in question, that long stretch along 2000 South?
We don't.
No.
If you'll scroll, Drew, it's contained in part of the property description of the home that's right there. I forget the family name. Hoops, I think, but I might be wrong. Horrocks. Burrows. I think I had the right vowels and consonants, just organized incorrectly. For whatever reason, when that location was divided and developed, and it was prior to a lot of our land use regulation and development regulation, that stretch was included in that property description. That doesn't mean the landowner can't convey it to the city, and the city can't, then go ahead and impose it. Not impose, but construct road improvements.
Can you pull that just a little bit to the
It does mean that we can't require the applicant across the street to go, require a different property owner to do something on there.
I'm going to switch over to parking, if that's all right. Drew, you've checked the parking. It meets the requirements based on the square footage.
Well, it will, but again, it's kind of premature because I don't know what businesses are going to go in there. So I just did a general thing on it because we don't know, because if it is a restaurant, it changes. If it's retail, it's one per square foot, so it's really hard. But the convenience store, I think, will have ample, because if you go to,
What are the number of parking spaces? I had written down in my notes 22 for the 3 buildings, but those might be old notes.
Yeah, if I'm just taking it straight, worst case scenario, putting all three of those buildings together would be 5,400, correct? So I would need 22 basically for those three buildings. I would need for the convenience store, even though I'm just again going worst case scenario, I would need 20. I'm sorry, I need, well, that is right, I need 18. So I'm now at 40. And as just a quick glance, I think I have more than 40 stalls on this drawing.
There's 72 stalls.
Oh, well, that came from, yeah, thank you. No, you're good. I'm glad. So right now, again, with just looking at those three, but again, that could go up a little bit depending on, because restaurants are based on seating. So again, I did look at that and counting, I knew we were up above, I just don't remember the number, but it was more than at my worst case on that, but it could be.
Appreciate that, Drew.
Okay.
All right, so that answers, I just wanted to make sure that we were checking the box that it met our code on the parking.
Council, do you have any other thoughts about the flow within the proposal itself, as far as the way the the proposed gas pumps layout, the number of gas pumps, etc.?
Mayor, I have a comment or question. I know at Planning Commission, some people had, maybe mentioned lowering the number of pumps to 8 pumps rather than 12. And I've given that some thought. And as I've been driving around the last couple of weeks, I've been observing gas stations. And I originally thought, oh, that might be nice to only have 8 pumps. But then as I thought a little bit about the traffic, then you might have some lineup of cars waiting for pumps. And so, I guess, you could have a smaller little pump station area, but then you might have cars lined up, you wouldn't get them through as fast. So anyway.
Is there a general, I'd love for feedback to open up some discussion amongst you about maybe before even, there have been a lot of concerns that have been brought up about health, welfare, and safety, placement of a gas station. Does it make sense here? Does it make sense someplace else? I guess I'm asking for you to open up some dialogue, as this is a design and use discussion. Let's talk use for a minute. Does the gas station make sense?
Sorry, I thought you were, I'm sorry about that, Mayor. I just want to, I'll just go ahead and start talking about that, because that was a concern for me when at the Plan Commission I went back and watched the video, and when people had brought up the concerns for health. I have family members who have cancer, and actually one who is going through treatments right now, and so I actually did spend a lot of time learning about gas stations and the safety measures that are in place, and even watched some videos of how everything is installed, and the pressure vacuum vent valves and the static pressure of tanks, the fittings and the adapters, the vapor balance control equipment. There's federal, not only as Dad had mentioned about the Utah code, but there's also federal laws that regulate the gas stations. And I had read through some of the studies that were sent to me, and in one place it said engineers and regulators have paid a lot of attention to leaking underground storage tanks and leaking piping between storage tanks and gasoline dispensing stations, which can result in catastrophic fuel release to the subsurface. And so double-walled tanks have become a standard. And so it seems like, as I don't remember your name, Stan. So it sounds like there's been a lot of changes as engineers and regulators have seen issues, because it would affect not only the people that are surrounding that area, but it would be a problem for everyone with the gas leaking into our water systems and everything. And so this is something that I have spent a lot of time reading back because it is a concern because of the health and safety of our residents here. But from looking at all the requirements and the regulations, and I even watched, like as they were saying, how when the gas goes in, they have to hook up another tube. I don't know what it's called. That collects the vapors, and so those are some of the thoughts that I had about that. And then I guess if we want to talk about this, I'll address other things as we bring up those topics.
I appreciate those comments. It's interesting information. I read through all the data on the that was provided to us on the benzene, and I've had some experience on fuel stations and how they work on the double wall tanks, and I look at it as if our cars are driving all the way. I mean, for me, I live out south of Fields. I have to drive basically all the way through Washington City to fuel my vehicle. Now, maybe I'm doing that anyways because I'm going to work, but on the weekend I wouldn't have to. I could drive here, and it saves on emissions. I look at it as it goes both ways, is that either I'll get rid of all our cars and not have gas stations and walk everywhere, and then we're 100% safe. But I think the state and the feds have done a very good job on regulations of fuel. So I don't have concerns as much on the fuel station because I think they do a good job. And I think we have just as much concern, if we're going to be concerned about the fuels, as just driving across town and burning up the fuels in our vehicles. So I think there's a savings to the wear and tear on our roads, the wear and tear on the vehicles, and it all adds up. So, and I think it's important to have commercial in the fields. I think it's important to have commercial and a good mix. So that's kind of where I'm standing on the fuel station side.
The rest of the council, your thoughts on the fuel station, on the gas use?
So I've had some of my concerns resolved today. I had a few concerns, and during the course of the discussion, they've been resolved. I'll kind of just tell you where I'm at on the project. I'm good with the use. I like the use of I like the project. I'm good with having a gas station there. I'm good with the stores. So I'm good with that. I'm good with the site plan that we have there. The improvements that they've made since Planning Commission, I think are good. One concern I have, we've talked a lot lately about what our vision is for commercial development down in the fields as far as how we want it to look. I'm not thrilled about the look of the gas station. It looks really commercially to me,
I like that word.
Yeah,
Commercially.
that's probably not the right word, but I'd rather see something that fits in a little bit better with the community, that maybe, doesn't look like it's a gas station, but doesn't look like a gas station. That's kind of where I'm at. And so, I'm not 100% on the architecture of it, although, it looks fantastic, but I'm just not sure it's the right fit for that location.
Are you asking if the design could be better?
Yes, that's what I'm saying. I'm thinking something more like, the council just went on a trip up north, and one building I like up there is the creamery in Beaver, the creamery. That kind of architecture to me would maybe fit in a little bit better in the fields. Maybe something, more of a historic Washington feel to it that kind of ties in with the cotton mill and, this building here, the old schoolhouse. I don't know. But so for me, just to let you know where I'm at, I'm good with the use. I'm good with the site plan. The architecture for me could be improved a little bit just to fit in more with the neighborhood. So,
thank you, Councilmember. Councilman Martinson or Ivy, any thoughts along the use of the gas station? And maybe we'll kind of throw in car wash as well as we're having this conversation.
Yeah, it was
much like Councilmember Casperson, read the studies and then did some additional research on my own, and all the studies that I found out, the vapor technology, vapor capture technology has come such a long ways, and the concern isn't so much from the fuel tanks underground and the emissions that are emitted there from the fueling and the resupplying. It's from the, as Stan mentioned, it's from the actual person gassing up. And I don't know, I'm not perfect every time when I gas up my vehicle. Sometimes some spills out on the ground, and that's where the studies that I found show that that's where the bigger concern is the gas that spills on the ground as you're pumping your vehicle. Because how many times have we lifted the pump off of the handle and gas isn't all the way out and it leaks out onto the ground as you're putting it into your vehicle? Or you don't let it go all the way into your tank and you pull it out and there's gas that comes out. So, but yeah, the studies that I saw and read, that's their bigger concern is that. So any way we can alleviate that would be great.
Any additional comments on the gas station use or the car wash? And I see a city manager has a comment he'd like to make.
I'd like to make two comments quickly, maybe one general and one more specific to this project. I think we've discussed at times in the past when we've done general plans and we've done different planning for the city, the need for commercial in the fields. And I think that's important to recognize here. This particular commercial piece was reduced in size down to the 3.5 acres that we have here from, I believe, 10. And Drew can correct me if I'm wrong. We moved it. So the city has done some things to really try to help make that more of a neighborhood commercial area. 10 acres would have been a large commercial piece and been more impactful.
Before you go on, do you know, can we ask about the time frame about, do you know?
Okay, Andrew would probably know. Do you remember when they moved that?
Or how long how long has it been the commercial zoning, and then when it
So it's been
changed to-
commercial zoning for 2 years, because that's when it got, the one that was up
It was toward the
directly
north.
opposite the churches was just general planned for that area to have an opportunity to be zoned commercial. But then the Sullivans came in with their whole PUD, and then and again, because PUD is what we talked about, it's customized, negotiating, general plan zoning. So they went to a smaller footprint for the commercial to put it on the corner versus up north. And the design just laid out better that council felt 2 years ago of taking the commercial up opposite the churches, it was directly across the street from them, putting it on the corner and having the whole development, come about with the townhomes, the patio homes, and the single family homes as part of the entire project.
So that being said, I agree with Councilman Coates, and we've had this discussion. It's general to the area, but Rusty, in her contract, she makes me talk about this every time, but we know we're very residential heavy. And I think that makes it difficult generally to add commercial after the residential's in place. We know that. It's much easier to do maybe what St. George did, which is put it all on our borders, put it out there when it's our residents and we have nothing to say about it, and have our residents drive that far for their services. But we've recognized the need for commercial in the Washington Fields area. So we have just a few areas. This is one small area. We have a little small area in Stookie Farms, and then we have the 3650 area. And I think when the mayor talks about design, I think it's really important. We as a group would like to see the best possible project, design-wise and use-wise for the area. And that can be debated, but I think we had a discussion with the applicant and the designer, the landscape designer, the architect that we have engaged to do some Washington Fields commercial design guidelines. And I think we've had some good productive discussion there. So if you like the architecture and the design, you can certainly go that direction. But I think the applicant has expressed some willingness to look and help work with our architect and landscape designer, just because they are already familiar with sort of what we've proposed for a Washington Fields area. So that's a route you could also look at. But I know in order to do that, it would probably be fair to the applicant to let them know whether or not you like the uses, so that they don't go spend a lot more money on design and make it look like something that we're more pleased with, and then not have those uses in place so they're just spending money to not end up with the uses. So that's my comment. Thanks, Mayor.
Any further comment on the uses there with the 3 retail units? I guess that could be looked at, but specifically with the fuel station and the 1 tunnel and 3 bay car wash facility.
So I wanted to piggyback on your comment about reducing, and you saw that there needs for a 12. I could see that there could be need for more, but I'm trying not to get in the way of that. I think if the fit is the fit, maybe if we add 2 more, then it's too many, right? Like, I don't know. I'll let the engineers and the applicant figure that out, but I'm just saying, I saw it as if you lay out a gas station, you don't have enough, it will back up, you'll have problems. So I appreciate that comment. So I just wanted to make clear that I'm okay with where we're at with that.
Further discussion on use. I'd like to go to some design questions. Getting a feel for the council on use.
I think I want to just kind of address the car wash because someone had brought that up. In my mind, just restricting car washes, doing a 6-month, that they can't do any car washes, it doesn't really solve the overall water issue. I feel like you're kind of just picking someone that you can't do this, and then we're allowing all this other development. And then other people like that go do their car wash, if they go somewhere else, like if they go wash their car at this other place, they're just gonna go, if it's closer, they're just gonna go to this car wash. And so I like, as we're discussing water ordinances, I feel like it would be better to address our community as a whole and not really, pick out certain businesses that they can't do it, but then allow other businesses to continue to use water.
I would ask, I'm going to stay on that subject, but switch on, we talked about the landscape ordinance that we're currently working on, which includes the car wash. Is there a number that the council is comfortable with now? I don't know if we have enough data to determine that, but I also don't want to say you can't, because we're not prepared to say you can only do this much, or you have to abide by this landscape ordinance when we finally figure it out. I'm wondering if I'm just asking the questions that make sense to set a limit, but not be too stringent right now, because we don't know the data. And because looking at the data that was provided to us, they need between 40 and 70 between theirs. Is that correct, Bronson? Okay, they're shaking their heads yes for the record.
That's without the recycler, right? Correct?
Yeah.
But you said you could, if it were required on this, that you could potentially get down to 15 if needed, correct?
Correct, yes.
Okay.
So that, I appreciate that, because that was what I was going to fall into, is that I'm in favor of having a recycler on all these car washes. I'm surprised we don't have them if they're not in. So just because with the current state we're in, I think that's a minimum requirement for me, is to have a recycler. But I don't know the limit on that gallons, because I don't have the data.
I think what other municipalities are leaning toward is probably the stricter end of the spectrum. I know seems to be a consensus that we have some consistency among the water users, and so I could see other municipalities approving that at 15. So I think, and as you pointed out, council member, the ordinance is to be effective for the new development. So I would be in favor of, if a motion is made at some point to approve that they would comply with the ordinance, I think is a reasonable ask.
So the ordinance that it was 15, because the one we had was not 15 when we
Right, I understand that. I understand that that's a draft, and it is difficult because you've got multiple municipalities looking at it. But I can tell you that our larger neighbors to the west are looking at stricter than what our initial draft. So for what that's worth, I don't know if it'll end up at 25 or 20 or 15, but I know that you've each expressed the desire to have some uniformity to the extent possible within the ordinance, and I think that makes sense. And but you'll make the motion and you'll make the vote on that.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and I do want to be consistent, but without knowing exactly what that is, I don't know what to do. I'll admit.
Do you guys know what the numbers that we were discussing off the top of your head?
Yeah, so, well, our own council actually took a big lead on drafting that, and so I'll let you answer what our ordinance says, and I can tell you what I've heard within the meetings I've had with the mayors of the other cities.
Are you admitting that you don't remember from last week?
I believe it's 25. So, but on the record, you can correct me if I'm wrong.
I don't remember either, so allow me to pull
Okay.
the document.
And you wrote it, and I just read it. So
It was 25 in our ordinance.
Was
but
it 25?
There's been some expression to go down. I think, and our council could correct me if I'm wrong, but I think as part of the approval process, you could just say needs to comply with the future landscaping ordinance. So it lands wherever it lands, and if they pull their permit before and there's no landscaping ordinance, they pull their actual construction, get their drawings in and everything, then I guess, but they don't need to wait on us, but I think it'll be fairly soon when we pass that ordinance.
Okay, well, I appreciate that, and that's what I wanted to make clear is that I don't want them being held up by us if we are still working out our ordinance and working with the other communities to move forward. So it's not a sticking point, but the one thing is that I think we need a recycler.
So the document I pulled up says 20 gallons.
So we were all wrong.
So Manager Ed was closest. It is just.
Wait a minute, I covered my bases with 25, 20, and 15.
Hey, we're just staying with that. Staying with that.
All the numbers just maybe not correctly organized. Again, just to be clear, it's only for new or redeveloped car wash projects.
But is that based on when they put their application in, which is their application for their zoning, or is it based on the building permit?
So on a new ordinance like this, it would be a new or redeveloped car wash after the effective date of the ordinance. The ordinance also requires recirculation and 20 gallons of new water. That's what it's saying, is you got to recirculate no matter what, and you can only use 20 gallons of water per vehicle. The ordinance hasn't been adopted. It's just under discussion at this council, and so those are terms that you all possess the ultimate authority on.
So council, whether I agree or disagree with the use, I'm finding that there's a consensus among the council in regards to the use. I'd like to talk a little bit about design. I felt like one of the most helpful comments that was submitted was by Sean Sullivan, and he is the developer who sold this parcel to the applicant. He's also the developer who will develop all the acreage in Heritage Place. And I'll take a little mayoral privilege to read some of the comments that Drew, do you have that? Is that something you can pull up? I think I sent that to you earlier. It's in your email. I don't know if that's legible, but maybe you can zoom in on it. If there is a use that is looking like that's acceptable, then I'd like to look at some of these details, and frankly, I feel like these details might it may be something that the applicant would have to go back and look at. Obviously this isn't something that we could design from this bench, but I'd like to put these onto the record as some of the concerns that the neighboring development has. Talks about architectural design. Would like to see an overall design that fits our area, identifies an upscale development, possibly flat roofs with varying heights. I think that makes a lot of sense on if there's a fuel pumps, I think that makes sense on the canopy rather than that large pitched roof. Possibly exterior walls that have awnings and other detail that would jog in and out, provide visual interest, no blank flat walls. I think Councilmember Henderson's comment about the creamery and some of the other architectural features local makes sense. Possibly eliminate or minimize the vacuum station awning. It shouldn't be an eyesore. If possible, we should like to be kept abreast of the proposed design detail that we might be able to comment. So I think I'd like to see that. And the second one is block walls. Would like to see identical block walls to our Heritage Place subdivision, which will be charcoal color with one row of split face block showing through on both sides. Would like to see a 7 foot rather than a 6-foot block wall, measured from the highest grade of the commercial or townhomes between Heritage Place and the townhomes and commercial. Would like to see a 6-foot block wall on the west of the development running through the middle of the proposed landscape area. This will minimize the visual impact of the commercial and will help block the noise from the vacuums, drive-through or throughs, and car wash. Item 3, elevation. Would like to see the grade elevation of the commercial be no higher than the grade elevation of the adjacent Heritage Place townhomes. Lighting. We'd like to see shielded down lighting, preferably by yellow amber light color, including parking light lighting that would not spill over and glare into residents' homes, and no LEDs. This includes gas lighting for the gas pumps. Possibly have all or some of the perimeter and parking lot be bollards rather than poles. Minimize the overall amount of the light in the project, but with enough for safety. Signage, we would like to see all signs be monument signs, not pole signs, no flashing signs, store signs that do not glare into residents' homes, no LED messaging, and gas price signs that do not include LED gas prices. Landscaping, would like to see the landscape strip portion of the landscaping on the west side of the development be identical to our Heritage Place subdivision, which will include 2 large alternating trees, southern live oak and red push pistache. Did you cover those in shade tree, council member? Possibly. Okay. Trees would be located outside the requested block wall. And item 7 is something that I personally agree with as well. Location of gas pumps. If possible, we'd like to see the pumps relocated to run perpendicular to the C-store, so there's less impact on the adjacent townhomes. If perpendicular, car headlights would not be pointed at townhome residents when entering, exiting, and fueling. It seems to be a better transition from pumps to car wash and vice versa. And then I think this is a big comment, a big discussion here that could be had is hours of operation. We would request that hours of operation be limited because the project is located in a residential neighborhood. And one of the concerns that Mr. Sullivan shared with me was specifically with the car wash and the vacuum, that they'd like to have some reasonable hours of operation. I know that's a lot. That's not something that we could address tonight, but I wanted that to be on the record, and I wanted the applicant to hear that.
Well, I feel like the hours of operation was discussed in the planning commission, and was that added to the?
Well, I think what we have from the planning commission though is a recommendation for denial. And so sometimes you'll have a recommendation for approval with conditions. So I think at this point it's to the council. If the council is inclined to look at approving a use and maybe improving the design at some point, I think it would be to the council to look at some of those conditions, and whether that could be done tonight, I don't know that it could be done tonight thoroughly as it needs to be.
So none of their, well, I guess they already made some changes, but some of the other changes like the lighting and the hours of operation, we would have to.
I think those would, and Drew, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think at this point where there was a recommendation for denial, I think, well, he's brought back the change has been brought back.
Right, now you guys can either uphold or amend or overturn a recommendation to you. That's your options.
And I guess another option would be to table and allow design to come back.
Right. Now, also, I want to point out before I do forget and we move on to something else, you can limit hours of operation in a PUD. You can in fact, I think they might have agreed to that at one point anyway, that they would be willing to limit those. And so part of a PUD, you can do that, and especially when they agree to that terms and condition of approval. So, don't hesitate that you feel like you can't, but you can put that on. So
I feel like those are all pretty reasonable requests.
So I agree to disagree on all of them. I'm not going to dive into each one, but I kind of sit and think. I can see some of these concerns. I would ask the applicant to address the ones that he's concerned with, but I don't see them all being required. And I understand that he sold the property to the applicant. If he was concerned about his residents, he might have could have put these conditions in the sale to the owner. So I like some of the comments. Some of them I think are too much. So, but I'll just tell the council where I'm feeling. I'm good with the uses. I'm ready to make a motion on the uses, and because there has been concern about the look of the building to fit with what our vision of the fields are being, I'd like to see that come back, but I think the applicant has the right to have his uses secured before he goes and spends money, because he's already spent money to get to this point. And I agree, it's a great design, but we've been clear on we kind of want a different look for the fields. So if you're ready for a motion, I'm ready to make one.
Council, are you ready for a motion, or would you like to continue discussion? I'll call for a motion on item 9B.
I'll make a motion that we approve item 9B for the approve an ordinance of the zone change Z-21-26 for PUD planned unit development, commercial design located at Washington Field Roads in 2000 South, with the findings and conditions from staff, with the approval of the uses only at this time. Use number 1 is a fuel station. Use number 2 is a car wash. Use number 3 of I'm going to say retail / the 3 retail store units. With the additional condition on the car wash that it has to have a recirculation pump and meet 20 gallons per car wash.
Thad, before we get a second, is that clear on the use versus design portion of the motion?
It's clear. I would be more comfortable if the applicant stand up and just indicate that they're okay with this happening. I think technically they're entitled to ask for an up or down vote on everything they've presented. They appear to have been willing to collaborate with the council's viewpoint on things, but maybe we just ask.
I'd invite the applicant to come forward and clarify
or just confirm that the approach that the council has taken with kind of a bifurcated motion, approving use but reserving design, is something that you can agree to.
Yeah, we definitely agree to that. We welcome that.
So, and just so I'm clear to the council, I'm saying everything on the site plan is approved, but I'm not saying to move anything other than if the design works, the rotation of the gas pumps.
Recorder, have you got the motion? Got that clear?
Yes, I believe so. Did we want to indicate that this does not include the design?
Yes, I think the councilman was clear on that.
On the architectural design.
The architectural design, but he was clear on the use and the placement other than potentially rotating the gas pumps.
Perfect.
I have a motion by Councilmember Coates. I'll call for a second.
Well, can I just?
Yes, discussion, sure.
So would that include like the hours also?
I'm not talking hours, I'm talking.
So just the use, and
Just
and
the
then
uses.
and we'd go back and.
And we can address the hours, the architectural look. So I'm assuming when I say architectural look, I'm talking block walls, heights, but the use is there. The layout is there. The accesses are what they are. So I'm not.
So I guess what you say is you're approving the use, the layout, and reserving all other details for the council.
What Thad said.
Good,
I'm going to amend my motion to what Thad said on that. No, I'll say it. The uses, the layout, and the access points. Is that
reserving all other
items to be readdressed after relooking at the architecture,
including design?
Now, do I need to make a motion of when that comes back? I mean, I would ask the applicant, how much time do you need? What I don't want to happen is we get down the road and all of a sudden you're trying to do construction drawings and we're not ready for that yet. So I would say this is a condition that be brought back before building permit gets pulled.
And be brought back on a continued, I'd say a continuation of this hearing.
Yes.
Bronson, do you know when you want to be able to bring it back?
I would ask, is there any way that we could get input from?
I would recommend that we have a meeting with the city staff and you and
I
kind
would
of
love
work
to have the manager, the mayor,
and get with our planner.
council members, some city staff. I welcome that.
Does that
So we
continue
can-
the public hearing, or it is?
Well, that would be a work meeting. We should probably identify a date for the continued meeting. Can we have a work meeting and get the feedback from professional folks in a month?
Yeah.
And so the staff's always available for technical advice on projects. And so that doesn't need a council motion. But we can certainly contemplate that happening as part of the discussion and motion. But I think the motion would say continued consideration of this hearing at a date certain.
And as Drew mentioned, the continued, so would we open another public hearing for the next?
You've already
And is
closed
that
it.
noticed? I've closed it. That's why I'm asking. And my understanding initially was that
You're not required to, but you can if you want, maybe. But you're not required to hold it.
maybe. Thank you,
Well,
attorney.
at your
I'm teasing.
discretion.
I'm teasing.
So I've heard the public comment. I understand their concern. We're here to talk about the design aspect, so I'm not looking in my motion to open up the public hearing on those. If we want to ask the public, I say we work on a work session because we're just looking at the design.
I'd like to hear the council. Are you wanting to continue the public hearing on the other aspects, or have you heard the things that you would like to hear to this point?
This remains a public matter. You'll hold it in a public meeting that's publicly noticed. I think the only real question is, will you invite or accept public comment? If it's a public hearing, we have to notice as that. If the mayor and the council want to exercise discretion and invite public comment, they're always welcome to.
But legally with this motion, which is essentially a partial approval, is the way I hear it, does that, I'm trying to understand if there is another component for a public hearing after this, and I don't have the legal answer for that.
Not a requirement.
Only if this group, that's the way they want to do it.
Okay,
You
so
know, the
that
voting
doesn't need to
members
be
could do
addressed
it
at this
that way.
point.
If they don't, then you don't, because
So there's certain elements of the public business that law requires be conducted together with a public hearing. Tonight was one of them, right?
Right.
If you continue consideration after having closed the public hearing, you don't have to reopen and redo another public hearing.
Okay.
But like our prior mayor showed in prior years, you can allow public comment anytime you want.
Okay.
And so do you have to hold another public hearing? No. Will you choose to? I think it's up to your discretion and whatever you see, probably.
Council, is the motion clear that's been made with the help from staff? Okay, we have a motion by Council Member Coates. Is there further discussion before I call for a second?
Maybe just specify the date of the continued meeting.
yeah, let's give a date.
Continued.
And I would recommend maybe you give them exactly, it's nice because February, same days follow in March. So I would just say, I know it's going to be March 9th, unless it's not leap year this year, is it?
How much time do you think you need to work on the design element of the?
If we could, I'd like to have a sit-down meeting first, if we can do that. And then,
I would say sometime in March.
yeah,
But
next week or
but
two, if
the
we can
9th
sit down and get some direction and have some good dialogue and get an
I,
understanding.
I'm more, at this point, if the uses, if it's seeming that the uses are going to be approved, I appreciate the applicant wanting to get going, but the design's going to be there long-term. And so I would like to give the applicant plenty of time to get the design to where it needs to be. We understand what would be approved at this point. Are you thinking 23rd of March?
I think just talking to Derek, the architect, and Phil, the engineer, I think if we can have a meeting in the next week or two, get some direction on what you guys really want to see and get in some weeds and dive down into it. He's saying between 2 and 4 weeks for him to get some renderings and some elevations back to you guys.
We'll say March 23rd to your
That would
motion.
probably work great.
I would be happy to bring it March 23rd, but is the 23rd a council meeting or is that a work session? Because I want it on a work session, not a council meeting.
23rd is the fourth Wednesday of March.
So it would need
The fourth would be a
on
regular
council
meeting.
To make an approval.
What? Are you looking to have this brought back to a work session before it comes to a regular meeting?
Well, maybe it doesn't need to. I was assuming that's what we were doing, but if that's not the case, I'm fine either way. I'm assuming that we're going to get the input from, we've kind of expressed our input. I know you'll get with staff and work it out. I'm good with the March 23rd. Is that what we said? So I'll make that amendment that this will come back to us at the city council on March 23rd for the items listed previously.
Okay, we have a motion by Councilmember Coates.
I second it.
Second by Councilmember Henderson. This is an ordinance, so we'll do a roll call vote. Coates?
Aye.
Henderson?
Aye.
Martinson?
Aye.
Casperson?
Aye, but I can just say something.
Please.
So I just want to say that this property conforms with the intent of the land use designation standards and regulations that is permitted. And based on the comments that I've made, and that the property owner has the right to develop his property, and that, so that's why I'm saying aye.
Duly noted. Ivy?
Nay.
Motion passes 4-1. Move on to, we do not have a need to go into item 10, which is a closed session. We'll move on to item 11, which is adjournment. I'll call for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Coates, second by Martinson. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned.